Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel for more. Now let's start the story.
What if Ben 10 was in Hunter x Hunter Universe Chapter 1? Worlds apart, the Omnitrix sparked and fizzled on Ben Tennyson's wrist as he tumbled through empty space. 1 minute he'd been fighting some weird squid-faced alien who'd been ranting about dimensional barriers, and the next, ow. Ben crashed face-first onto hard stone ground. He groaned, pushing himself up on his elbows. Okay, that's gonna leave a mark. The 16-year-old hero blinked dust from his eyes, taking in his surroundings. He stood in what looked like a massive underground tunnel. Hundreds of people milled around, dressed in everything from suits to battle gear to, was that guy wearing a wizard hat? This is definitely not Bellwood, Ben muttered, running a hand through his brown hair. The Omnitrix on his wrist flickered green before settling back to its normal state. At least you're still working. Sort of. A tap on his shoulder made Ben spin around. A boy about his age with spiky black hair and wide, curious eyes stared at him. The kid wore green clothes and carried a fishing rod strapped to his back. Hey there. Did you just appear out of nowhere? That was so cool. The boy grinned, bouncing on his heels with excitement. I'm gone, freaks. Are you here for the Hunter exam too? Ben blinked twice. Hunter, what now? The Hunter exam. Gon pointed around at the crowd. Everyone here is trying to become a hunter. You know, people who track down treasures, rare animals, even other people. His enthusiasm was contagious, despite Ben's confusion. Right. Hunters. Ben glanced around again, his mind racing. Dimensional travel wasn't new to him, but usually Paradox showed up by now to explain things. I'm Ben. Ben Tennyson. Ben 10 New York Sun, Gon repeated, testing the name. That's an interesting name. So what kind of hunter do you want to be? Before Ben could answer, 3 more people approached. A tall guy with tiny sunglasses and a suit. A shorter blonde in blue tribal clothes. And a white-haired kid about Ben's age with sharp blue eyes that seemed to be analyzing everything. Gon, who's this? Asked the white-haired boy, eyes narrowing at Ben. This is Ben. He just appeared out of nowhere with this green flash. It was amazing. Gon gestured wildly with his hands to mimic an explosion. The blonde stepped forward. Appeared? That's unusual. I'm Kurapika, by the way. Leorio Paradonite, said the tall one, adjusting his small glasses. And you look a bit lost, kid. The white-haired boy didn't introduce himself, just kept watching Ben with calculating eyes. That's Killua, Gon said, pointing to his silent friend. We all just met too. Are you okay? You look confused. Ben rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I got here. I was fighting this alien who was messing with dimensional stuff, and then, alien. Leorio snorted. What, are you some kind of crazy person? Ben frowned, then glanced at his watch. The Omnitrix seemed to be functioning normally now. It's complicated. Everyone, please follow me, called a thin man with a large mustache and no mouth. He rang a bell to gather attention. The exam is about to begin. I am Saditz, your examiner for the first phase. The crowd began to move, following the strange examiner. Ben fell in step with Gon and his friends, mind racing. He needed information, resources, and maybe some help figuring out how to get home. If these hunters were some kind of elite in this world, getting that license might not be a bad idea. So this exam, Ben asked quietly. What exactly do we have to do? No one knows until it starts, Killua replied, finally speaking. That's part of the challenge. Saditz led them into a tunnel and suddenly broke into a run. The first phase has begun. Please follow me to the second phase. We're running? Ben asked as everyone around him started jogging. Gon grinned. Seems like it. Let's go. 2 hours later, Ben was seriously reconsidering his decision to join this exam. They'd been running non-stop through an endless tunnel with no breaks. People were already dropping from exhaustion around him. This is crazy, Ben panted to Killua, who was running beside him without breaking a sweat. How much longer is this tunnel? Killua shrugged. Who knows? But this is nothing. I can do this all day. Ben believed him. The kid moved like he was out for a casual stroll. Meanwhile, Ben's legs were burning, and they'd been running for hours. Ahead, Gon was chatting excitedly with a man in a business suit who looked equally exhausted. So what's your deal anyway? Killua asked suddenly. Gon said you appeared in a green flash. And you mentioned aliens. Ben hesitated. He didn't know these people or this world. But his gut told him Gon and his friends were good people. And he needed allies. Would you believe me if I told you I'm from another dimension? Killua's eyebrows rose slightly. Maybe. I've seen weirder things. Ben glanced at the Omnitrix. In my world, I've got this device that lets me transform into different aliens. I was fighting someone who was messing with dimensional barriers, and I think I got knocked into your world. Killua's eyes narrowed. Prove it. Ben smirked. Now they were talking. Not here. Too many people watching. But I will. Hey guys. Gon called back to them. Leorio's struggling. We should help him. Ben glanced back to see the suited man falling behind, gasping for breath. He's an adult, Killua said dismissively. He can take care of himself. But Ben saw the determination in Gon's eyes. The kid wasn't going to abandon his friend. Something about that reminded Ben of himself. Go ahead, Ben told Gon. I'll help him catch up. Gon smiled gratefully and kept pace with Kurapika, who was also looking back with concern. Ben dropped back to where Leorio was struggling. Come on, old man, Ben teased. You giving up already? Leorio glared through his small glasses. Who are you calling old? I'm still a teenager. Ben nearly tripped in shock. Wait, what? No way. It's true. I'm 19. Leorio growled between heavy breaths. Ben couldn't help laughing, which seemed to energize Leorio through sheer anger. Don't laugh at me, you brat. Leorio sped up, moving alongside Ben now. I'm gonna be a hunter, just wait and see. That's the spirit, Ben encouraged. Race you to catch up with the others. They increased their pace, and soon rejoined Gon, Killua, and Kurapika near the front of the pack. Ben was breathing hard but feeling good. Maybe he could handle this crazy exam after all. Look. Gon pointed ahead. I see light. Sure enough, the tunnel was ending. They emerged into blinding sunlight and found themselves at the edge of a vast, misty wetland full of strange trees and eerie noises. Welcome to the Swindler's Swamp, Saditz announced once everyone had gathered. This is the site of the second phase. You must cross this treacherous terrain to reach the Phase 2 site. Be warned, this swamp is home to many dangerous creatures who will try to trick and devour you. Devour? Ben repeated, eyebrows raised. Many of the creatures here are masters of deception, Saditz continued. They will do anything to lure you into their traps. As if on cue, a beaten man staggered from the trees, pointing accusingly at Saditz. Don't be fooled. He's an imposter. I'm the real examiner. The crowd murmured in confusion as the newcomer held up the body of a monkey-like creature with a face identical to Saditz. That's a man-faced ape, the man explained. They disguise themselves as humans to lure victims. Ben tensed, watching both men carefully. His hand hovered over the Omnitrix. If things got dangerous, he'd be ready. Before anyone could react further, playing cards sliced through the air, striking the accuser and flying toward Saditz. The examiner caught the cards effortlessly, while the supposed real examiner collapsed, revealing himself to be another man-faced ape. Ben turned to see a lanky man with slick-back red hair and the outfit of a jester or magician shuffling cards. His face was painted with a star and teardrop, and his eyes. Ben shivered. Those eyes reminded him of some of the deadlier aliens he'd faced. A real hunter would have no trouble dodging that attack, the man said, his voice playful yet somehow threatening. I do so hate liars. Thank you for the assistance, Hisoka, Saditz said coolly. Though I would prefer you refrain from attacking an examiner. Hisoka smiled, a disturbing expression on his painted face. As he turned away, his eyes met Ben's for a brief moment. Ben felt a chill run down his spine as the man licked his lips and moved back into the crowd. That guy is bad news, Ben muttered to Killua, who nodded gravely. Hisoka failed last year's exam for nearly killing an examiner, Killua whispered. He's incredibly dangerous. Now, Saditz called out, please follow me closely through the swamp. If you lose sight of me, you will likely die. With that cheerful note, they plunged into the mist-covered swamp. The visibility quickly dropped to almost nothing, and the sounds of creatures lurking in the mist grew louder. Stay close, Ben called to Gon and the others. We need to keep Saditz in sight, Kurapika said, eyes scanning the fog. They ran in a tight group, following the shadowy figure of their examiner. Suddenly, screams erupted from various directions as contestants vanished into the mist. What's happening? Ben asked, tensing. The creatures are picking off the weak ones, Killua replied calmly. Just keep running. More screams, closer now. The mist swirled, and Ben lost sight of Saditz. Worse, the crowd was thinning, spreading out in the confusion. Guys, I think we're getting separated from the main group, Ben warned. Before anyone could respond, a massive frog-like creature erupted from the ground, swallowing several contestants in one gulp. The crowd scattered in panic. This way! Gon shouted, pointing to what he thought was Saditz's direction. As they ran, more creatures attacked. A giant snake-bird hybrid swooped down toward Leorio, who barely ducked in time. We need to move faster. Kurapika urged. The sound of sinister laughter floated through the mist. Hisoka appeared, surrounded by terrified contestants. Let's play a game, the jester said, cards fanning between his fingers. Who's worthy to be a hunter? With blinding speed, he slashed through the crowd, bodies dropping around him. Run! Killua grabbed Gon's arm. We can't fight him. But before they could escape, more beasts emerged from the swamp, cutting off their path. Trapped between monsters and a murderous clown, their situation looked dire. Ben made a split-second decision. Guys, remember when I said I could transform? Time to show you what I meant. He activated the Omnitrix, cycling through alien silhouettes before slamming down on the dial. Green light flashed, temporarily blinding everyone nearby. When the light faded, Ben was gone. In his place stood a 7-foot-tall tiger-like creature with no eyes, massive claws, and gills flaring along his neck. Wrath, the creature roared in a deep, angry voice. Let me tell you something, creepy swamp monsters and weird clown guy. Nobody threatens Wrath's new friends. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio stared in shock. Even Hisoka paused, his eyes widening with interest. What the? Leorio started. He really can transform, Killua whispered, eyes wide. Wrath launched himself at the nearest swamp creature, a massive centipede with human-like teeth. Cosmic clothesline, he shouted, smashing the beast aside with a powerful arm swing. The remaining creatures retreated into the mist, clearly recognizing a more dangerous predator. Wrath then turned toward Hisoka, who was watching with an amused smile. Fascinating, the jester purred. What an unusual ability. You want some too, face paint? Wrath will take you down faster than a sinking submarine on Tuesday. Hisoka's smile widened. Such interesting fruit, still unripe. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Perhaps another time. I sense you might actually provide some entertainment. With that, he vanished into the mist. Wrath growled, then hit the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, transforming back into Ben in another flash of green light. Ben staggered slightly, catching his breath. Sorry about that. Wrath gets a little intense. That was amazing. Gon exclaimed, bouncing around Ben. You turned into a tiger monster. How did you do that? Can you turn into other things? Does it hurt? Do you, Gon? Kurapika interrupted, we need to find Saditz before we're disqualified. Right, Ben nodded. Questions later. Let me try something else that might help. He activated the Omnitrix again, this time transforming into a blue, moth-like alien with 4 wings and large green eyes. Big Chill, he whispered in a raspy voice. I can fly above the mist and find our examiner. Hang tight. Big Chill soared upward, phasing through the mist until he had a clear view of the swamp. In the distance, he spotted Saditz's distinct figure leading a group of contestants toward a large gate. Big Chill swooped back down to his friends. I found him. They're heading that way, he pointed. About 2 miles. And we need to hurry. Can you carry us? Leorio asked hopefully. Big Chill shook his head. Not all at once, and we don't have time for trips. But I have another idea. He transformed again, this time into a velociraptor-like alien with wheels for feet and a black helmet-like head. XLR-8. Everyone grab on. He crouched, letting the others hold on to his streamlined form. This is so weird, Killua muttered, but grabbed on anyway. Hold tight. In a blur of blue and black, XLR-8 shot through the swamp, weaving between trees and leaping over hazards at incredible speed. The others clung desperately to his form as they zipped through the mist. Minutes later, they burst from the tree-line to find Saditz standing in front of a large gate. About 100 other contestants had already arrived. All eyes turned to stare at the strange alien creature carrying 4 people. XLR-8 skidded to a halt and let his passengers dismount before transforming back to Ben in another green flash. The crowd murmured in surprise and curiosity. Saditz's eyebrows raised slightly, the only indication of surprise on his otherwise expressionless face. Interesting transportation method. But you've arrived in time. Well done. Ben grinned at his new friends. Made it. Gon high-fived him enthusiastically. That was incredible. You've got to show me all your transformations. I have to admit, Kurapika said, that's an ability I've never encountered before. Even Killua looked impressed. Not bad. Though I could have run that fast myself. Sure you could, Ben laughed, nudging the white-haired boy. Hisoka emerged from the mist moments later, carrying an unconscious Leorio over his shoulder. Ben tensed, ready to transform again, but the jester simply laid Leorio down and walked away with a wink toward Ben. What happened? Gon asked, rushing to check on Leorio. I'm not sure, Ben replied, eyeing Hisoka warily. But I don't trust that guy. Once everyone had recovered, Saditz introduced the examiners for the next phase, Menchi, a young woman with green hair tied in buns, and Bohara, an enormous man with a huge belly. The second phase will test your culinary skills, Menchi announced. Cooking. Ben blurted out. We have to cook. A hunter must be accomplished in all areas, Menchi retorted. Your task is to satisfy our appetites with creative dishes. Bohara's challenge first, prepare a roast pork dish that impresses him. Bohara grinned. I'm hungry for whole roast pig. The great Stamp, the most ferocious pig in these woods, should make excellent meat. Time starts now. Menchi rang a bell, and contestants scattered into the forest. Ben found himself running alongside Gon and Killua again, with Kurapika and a now conscious Leorio close behind. Great stamps? Ben asked. What exactly are we looking for? Giant wild boars, Kurapika explained. Extremely aggressive and difficult to hunt. They're probably in that clearing up ahead, Gon pointed. I smell something big there. Sure enough, as they entered the clearing, they found massive pigs with enormous snouts grazing peacefully. Each was the size of a rhino. Those are pigs? Ben gaped. They're huge. One of the great stamps noticed them and let out a furious squeal, charging with surprising speed. The others followed suit, creating a stampede of giant pigs. Run! Leorio shouted, turning tail. They dashed through the forest with the pigs in pursuit, joining other contestants who were similarly fleeing. We need to find their weakness. Kurapika called out, dodging a pig that smashed through a tree like it was nothing. Ben ducked behind a boulder and activated the Omnitrix. Let me try something. He transformed into a small, white alien with headphone-like ears and a circular device on his back. Echo, echo. The small alien multiplied into 5 copies, each emitting powerful sonic screams that hit the pigs' foreheads. The beasts squealed in pain, their charge faltering. Their foreheads. Kurapika realized, observing the pigs' reactions. That's their weak point. Gon immediately swung his fishing rod, the lead weight striking a pig perfectly in the middle of its forehead. The massive creature toppled over instantly. Kurapika used his wooden swords to deliver precise strikes to another pig's forehead. Killua seemed to vanish and reappear behind a third pig, somehow striking its weak point with incredible speed. Even Leorio managed to bring one down by dropping from a tree directly onto its head. The Echo duplicates combined back into one, and Ben transformed back. Nice work, everyone. Each of them dragged their catch back to the exam site, where other contestants were already roasting their pigs over open fires. This is the weirdest cooking competition I've ever seen, Ben commented as he struggled to season his roast pig with limited supplies. Have you done many cooking competitions in your world? Gon asked, turning his pig on a spit. Not exactly. But my grandpa Max made some pretty weird food. I picked up a few tricks. When time was called, Bohara tasted each dish and passed every single contestant, declaring himself satisfied just to have food to eat. Menchie, however, proved much harder to please. Her challenge, make sushi. Sushi. Most contestants looked confused, but Ben smiled. Sushi is a dish from Japan on Earth, my world. Rice with raw fish on top, usually. I've had it before. Kurapika nodded. I'm familiar with the concept as well. The contestants scrambled to find fish and prepare rice, most having no idea what they were doing. Ben found himself at a workstation between Gon and a nervous man with pins in his head. So you're the shapeshifter, the pin-headed man commented. Interesting ability. Thanks, Ben replied warily, focusing on shaping his rice. Ben did his best to recall how sushi looked when his cousin Gwen had dragged him to a Japanese restaurant. The rice kept falling apart in his hands, and cutting the fish thinly proved harder than expected. When Menchie tasted his attempt, she promptly spat it out. Terrible. Next. One by one, she rejected everyone's sushi. Even Kurapika's careful attempt was deemed barely food. None of you pass. Menchie finally declared, having tasted and rejected every dish. The exam is over. Protests erupted from the crowd. All this way, through deadly tunnels and monster-filled swamps, only to fail at making fish and rice. A contestant with the number 255 pinned to his chest stepped forward angrily. This is ridiculous. Hunters don't need to cook. Hunters need every skill, Menchie retorted. Including the refinement to appreciate good cuisine. The large man lunged at her, but before Ben could even reach for the Omnitrix, Menchi had taken the man down with a series of lightning-fast moves using her kitchen knives. An awkward silence fell, broken by the arrival of a massive airship hovering overhead. An elderly man with incredibly long earlobes dropped from the ship, landing with surprising agility despite his age. Chairman Netero, Menchi greeted with a bow. The old man surveyed the scene. Menchi, I understand you failed all the applicants because of your personal taste. Menchi looked sheepish. I may have been a bit too harsh. Chairman Netero nodded. Then perhaps a demonstration of the skills you expect would be appropriate. A new test. After some discussion, Menchi announced a revised challenge: boiled eggs. Not ordinary eggs, but spider eagle eggs that dangled from webs in a deep ravine. The contestants followed Menchi to a massive canyon split by a river far below. Strong updrafts blew through the ravine, while thick strands of web stretched across the gap. Hanging from these webs were large egg sacs. Spider eagles build their nests on canyon walls, Menchi explained. To retrieve their eggs, you must jump into the ravine, grab an egg, and ride the updraft back up. To demonstrate, she dove off the cliff, caught a web strand on her way down, swung to an egg cluster, grabbed one, and then let go. For a terrifying moment, she plummeted toward the river below, then a powerful gust carried her back up to the rim of the canyon. The updrafts only come periodically, she explained, holding up her egg. Jump without timing it right, and you're finished. Ben whistled low. That's one way to make breakfast exciting. Let's go. Gon exclaimed, already poised to jump. Wait, Kurapika cautioned, studying the canyon. We should time the updrafts first. But several impatient contestants had already leaped, including the aggressive number 255. They grabbed eggs successfully but released too quickly. With no updraft to catch them, they plummeted toward the river, screaming. Now! Killua shouted, noticing a pattern in the valley's air movement. Ben jumped alongside his new friends, free-falling into the ravine. The sensation reminded him of flying as one of his aerial aliens, except with a lot less control. He grabbed a web strand, feeling it stretch under his weight before he swung toward an egg cluster. Snatching an egg, Ben let go of the web and found himself in free fall again. The river rushed up to meet him, and for a moment, he considered transforming into one of his flying aliens. Wait for it. Gon called from nearby, seeming completely unafraid. Ben decided to trust him. Seconds later, a powerful gust hit from below, carrying them upward like leaves in a tornado. Ben whooped in exhilaration as they sailed back up to the cliff edge, landing somewhat ungracefully but with eggs intact. Now that, Ben grinned, was awesome. Menchi had the remaining contestants boil their eggs alongside ordinary chicken eggs. When they were done, she instructed everyone to taste both. Ben bit into the spider eagle egg and his eyes widened. Whoa! This is amazing! The spider eagle egg had a rich, creamy texture and flavor that made the regular egg taste bland in comparison. The lesson, Menchi explained, is that there's effort and reward in creating exquisite food. A hunter appreciates the finer things while having the skills to acquire them, no matter how dangerous the pursuit. With the cooking phase complete, and enough contestants eliminated to satisfy Menchi, Chairman Netero invited the remaining applicants aboard his airship to be transported to the site of the third phase. As the airship rose into the air, Ben found a quiet spot by a window to watch the landscape shrink below them. The sun was setting, casting golden light across forests and mountains. So, came Killua's voice as he approached with Gon, alien transformations, huh? That wasn't Nen. Nen? Ben asked, confused. Killua and Gon exchanged glances. You really aren't from around here, Killua concluded. I tried to tell you, Ben sighed. I'm from another dimension. In my world, I've got this device, he held up his wrist, showing the Omnitrix, that lets me transform into different alien species. I've been a hero back home for years. A hero. Gon's eyes sparkled. Like the hunters in the stories. I guess, Ben smiled. Though from what I've seen so far, hunters in your world are complicated. You mean like Hisoka? Killua asked. Ben nodded. Where I come from, the line between good guys and bad guys is usually clearer. So how did you get here? Gon asked, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Ben. I was fighting this alien who was experimenting with dimensional travel. There was an explosion, the Omnitrix reacted weirdly, and next thing I knew, I was crashing into your hunter exam. And you need to get back, Killua surmised. Yeah. I've got family, friends, responsibilities. Ben stared at the darkening landscape below. But I have no idea how to cross dimensions without help. That's why you're taking the exam, Kurapika said, joining their conversation. You need resources and connections. Ben nodded. Hunters seem to have access to information in places others don't. I figured becoming one would help me find a way home. We'll help you. Gon declared immediately. After we pass the exam, we'll all look for a way to send you back. Ben smiled gratefully. Thanks, guys. That means a lot. Attention, applicants, came an announcement over the airship speakers. We will be flying through the night. The third phase will begin tomorrow morning. Dinner is being served in the main hall, and rooms are available for rest. Food. Gon and Killua exclaimed simultaneously, dashing off toward the dining hall. Ben laughed and followed more slowly with Kurapika, appreciating the moment of normalcy amid the strangeness of his situation. The dining hall was packed with contestants enjoying a lavish buffet. Ben loaded his plate with unfamiliar but delicious-looking dishes and joined his friends at a table. So these aliens you turn into, Leo Rio asked between mouthfuls, how many are there? The Omnitrix has DNA from thousands of different species, Ben explained. But I can only access about 10 at a time unless I unlock the master control, which I haven't figured out how to do in this version. And each one has different abilities? Kurapika asked. Ben nodded. Strength, speed, flight, elemental powers, all kinds of things. The trick is knowing which one to use in which situation. As they ate and talked, Ben noticed a familiar figure watching him from across the room. Chairman Netero stood observing the candidates, but his gaze seemed particularly focused on Ben. After dinner, as most contestants headed to their assigned sleeping quarters, Netero approached Ben directly. Young man, might I have a word? Ben glanced at his friends, then nodded. Sure. Don't worry, Netero smiled at the others. I'll return him shortly. Ben followed the elderly chairman to a private room with a large window overlooking the night sky. Despite his age and diminutive appearance, Netero moved with the grace and power of someone far younger. I've been conducting hunter exams for decades, Netero began, but I've never seen abilities quite like yours. Ben tensed slightly. Is that a problem? Not at all. The Hunter Association values unique talents. Netero stroked his beard thoughtfully. However, I sense you're not merely from another country or culture. Your energy feels different. Ben considered lying, but something told him this old man would see through any deception. I'm from another dimension, he admitted. I got trapped here during a fight and I'm trying to find my way home. Netero didn't seem surprised. I suspected as much. The boundaries between worlds are not as impenetrable as most believe. You know about other dimensions? Ben asked eagerly. The Hunter Association has documented various phenomena that suggest parallel realities, Netero explained. There's even a small branch of hunters who specialize in researching dimensional anomalies. Hope surged through Ben. Could one of them help me get home? Perhaps. If you complete the exam and become a licensed hunter, I can put you in contact with our foremost expert in the field. Netero's eyes twinkled. Consider it extra motivation to pass. Thank you, Ben said sincerely. I appreciate it. As he turned to leave, Netero called out, "One more thing, Ben Tennyson. While you're in our world, be careful with those transformations. Power invites challenge, and not all hunters have noble intentions." Ben nodded, taking the warning seriously. "I've noticed." When he returned to the others, they were eager to hear what Netero had wanted. "He knows I'm from another dimension," Ben told them quietly. "And he says there are hunters who research dimensional travel. If I pass the exam, he'll introduce me to their expert." "That's great news!" Gon exclaimed. "It's certainly fortunate," Kurapika agreed. "The chairman himself taking an interest in your case will open doors." "Yeah, if we pass the rest of the exam," Leorio reminded them. "Which means we should probably get some sleep." As they headed to their rooms, Killua pulled Ben aside. "You know Netero's testing you, right?" Ben frowned. "What do you mean?" "He could have just told you about this dimensional expert. Instead, he's using it as bait to see what you're capable of during the exam." Killua's eyes were serious. "He's not just helping you, he's evaluating you." Ben considered this. "You're probably right. But I don't have much choice, do I? I need that contact." "Just watch your back," Killua advised. "And don't show all your cards at once." With that cryptic warning, they joined the others in the sleeping quarters. Despite the comfortable beds, Ben found sleep elusive. His mind raced with thoughts of home, of Grandpa Max and Gwen wondering where he'd disappeared to, of aliens he'd left undefeated. He stared out the window at unfamiliar stars, the Omnitrix a comforting weight on his wrist. Whatever challenges this world had in store, at least he wasn't facing them alone. Dawn broke with the airship descending toward a massive stone tower perched atop a pillar of rock. As the contestants gathered on an observation platform, an examiner named Lippo explained the third phase, reached the bottom of Trick Tower within 72 hours. "This tower is a prison for dangerous criminals," Lippo explained with a grin. "I've designed multiple paths to the bottom, each with different obstacles. Good luck finding your way down." With that, he retreated to the airship, leaving the contestants to stare at the seemingly solid stone surface of the tower top. "So how do we get in?" Ben wondered aloud, stamping his foot experimentally on the stone. Around them, contestants began disappearing as they found hidden trapdoors in the surface. One overconfident man tried scaling the outside wall, only to be snatched away by massive flying beasts. There must be hidden doors, Kurapika reasoned, kneeling to examine the surface more carefully. Gon lay flat on his stomach, pressing his ear to the ground as he knocked gently across the surface. "I can hear hollow spots." Following his lead, they spread out, tapping the stone floor until they each found a trapdoor. "I found one," Leorio called. "Me too," said Kurapika from nearby. "Got one here," Killua waved. "Same," Ben confirmed, crouching beside his door. "They're arranged in a pattern," Gon observed. 5 doors, right next to each other. Ben glanced at his new friends. "Do you think they lead to the same place?" "Only one way to find out," Killua grinned. "On 3?" They counted together and triggered their trapdoors simultaneously, dropping through into a small chamber below. The doors above them sealed shut as they landed. "Well, we're in," Ben commented, looking around the plain stone room. A single tablet mounted on the wall displayed a message and 5 wristbands. Kurapika read the message aloud, "5-way majority rule. From here on, all decisions will be made by vote. 5 of you must proceed together to the bottom of the tower. Put on the wristbands." They each took a wristband with buttons labeled X and O. "Looks like we're stuck together for this phase," Leorio noted, not sounding particularly disappointed. A new message appeared on the tablet: "First choice, open the door with X or O." The wall revealed 2 doors marked with the corresponding symbols. "Which should we choose?" Gon asked. "Let's vote," Kurapika suggested, pressing his button. The others followed suit. The tablet displayed their result: 401X. Who voted X? Leorio demanded. Tonpa raised his hand with a smirk. Just keeping things interesting. The door slid open, revealing a long passageway. As they proceeded, they encountered more voting decisions, which path to take at intersections, whether to risk shortcuts, how to approach obstacles. Their progress was steady until they reached a large chamber with a stone platform in the center. On the platform stood 5 hooded figures in shackles. "Welcome to the Prisoner's Challenge," announced a voice from speakers in the ceiling. "Before you are 5 convicted criminals. To proceed, you must defeat them in challenges of their choosing, 5 on 5. The prisoners removed their hoods, revealing hardened faces of men who had clearly seen violence and hardship. "I'm Ben Dot," announced the largest prisoner, a muscular man with tribal tattoos. "Which of you will face me first?" The group huddled together to discuss strategy. "What kind of challenge do you think he'll choose?" Gon wondered. "Probably something physical, given his size," Kurapika reasoned. "I'll go," Ben volunteered. "I've got a few aliens that could handle whatever he throws at us." "Wait," Killua cautioned. "We don't know the rules yet. Your transformations might be considered outside help." "The kid with the watch wants to fight." Ben Dot laughed. "Fine by me. The challenge is simple, a fighting match. First to surrender or get knocked off the platform loses." Ben stepped forward onto the platform, which rose slightly, hovering above a dark pit. "Before we begin," Ben Dot said, "let me explain the stakes. My sentence is 199 years for serial murder. For each hour of your time I can waste, they'll reduce my sentence by 1 year." Ben glanced at the timer on the wall, 68 hours remaining. "So you're trying to stall us?" "Exactly." Ben Dot cracked his knuckles. "Ready, kid?" Ben reached for the Omnitrix, but Lippo's voice came over the speakers, "Outside tools or weapons are prohibited. This is hand-to-hand combat only." "What?" Ben's eyes widened. "But this is part of me." "Rules are rules," Lippo replied unsympathetically. "Fight as you are or forfeit." Ben reluctantly lowered his hand. He'd gotten so used to relying on the Omnitrix that fighting without it felt strange. But he wasn't helpless, he'd trained with Grandpa Max and Gwen for years. "Fine," Ben said, dropping into a fighting stance. "Let's do this." Ben Dot charged immediately, swinging a massive fist at Ben's head. Ben ducked under it, delivering a quick jab to the man's ribs before dancing away. "Not bad," Ben Dot grunted, barely fazed by the hit. "But not good enough." The prisoner was faster than he looked, catching Ben with a glancing blow to the shoulder that sent him stumbling toward the edge. "Ben!" Gon called out in concern. Ben regained his balance just in time, circling more cautiously now. Ben Dot was stronger and more experienced, but Ben noticed he favored his left side slightly. When Ben Dot charged again, Ben feinted left, then slipped right, landing a solid kick to the prisoner's knee. Ben Dot grunted in pain but recovered quickly, grabbing Ben's ankle and flinging him across the platform. Ben rolled with the impact, coming back to his feet. His shoulder throbbed where Ben Dot had struck him, but he forced himself to focus. "Give up, kid," Ben Dot taunted. "You're out of your league." "I've fought way worse than you," Ben retorted, remembering battles with Vilgax and other alien warlords. "And I didn't have my hands tied then either." Ben Dot rushed forward again, this time feinting a punch before sweeping Ben's legs. Ben jumped over the sweep but caught a powerful uppercut that nearly sent him over the edge. Hanging on with one hand, Ben could hear his friends shouting encouragement. With a grunt of effort, he pulled himself back onto the platform, blood trickling from his split lip. "Last chance to surrender," Ben Dot offered, advancing slowly. Ben wiped the blood from his mouth and grinned. "Not gonna happen." As Ben Dot moved in for the finish, Ben waited until the last possible moment, then ducked under the man's guard. Using the prisoner's own momentum, Ben executed a perfect shoulder throw, a move Gwen had used on him countless times during training. Caught by surprise, Ben sailed over Ben's shoulder and off the edge of the platform, his shout of anger cutting off as he caught himself on the rim. "Surrender," Ben demanded, standing over Ben straining fingers. After a tense moment, Ben growled, "I surrender." The platform lowered, allowing Ben to drop safely to the ground. A light on the wall illuminated, 1 win for the applicants, 0 for the prisoners. "Way to go, Ben." Gon cheered as Ben rejoined them, wincing slightly from his injuries. "That was reckless," Kurapika commented, though he looked impressed. "But effective," Killua added with a small smile. The next prisoner stepped forward, a slim man with calculating eyes. "I'm Sidokan. My challenge isn't physical but mental, a simple game of candles." Kurapika volunteered for this match. The game involved choosing between 2 candles and keeping one's flame lit longer than the opponent's. Despite Sidokan's attempt to trick him with a rigged candle, Kurapika outsmarted him by using his hunter's instincts to protect his flame from hidden air currents. With another victory secured, they faced the third prisoner, a gaunt man who challenged them to a death match where both contestants would be shackled together at the wrists. "I'll take this one," Killua said confidently. Before anyone could object, the boy stepped onto the platform. The match was shockingly brief. The moment the shackles were secured, Killua twisted his hands in a strange manner. There was a sickening crack, and the prisoner collapsed, his heart apparently stopped by some technique Killua had used. His name was Jonas, the dissector, Killua explained casually as he returned to them, showing no remorse. "I recognized him from the wanted lists my family keeps." Ben stared at Killua with new understanding. This kid wasn't just skilled, he was trained as an assassin. With 3 victories secured, they needed only 1 more to proceed. The fourth prisoner, a small man with twitchy eyes, challenged them to a gambling match using cards. "I'll handle this," Leorio volunteered. "I'm pretty good at cards." Unfortunately, Leorio's confidence exceeded his skill. The prisoner, Larut, easily manipulated him into making increasingly risky bets, ultimately securing a win for the prisoners. "Sorry, guys," Leorio apologized, looking ashamed. "It's all right," Gon reassured him. "We still have 1 more chance." The final prisoner was a lanky man with long hair who introduced himself as Mechtani. "My challenge is another battle," he announced, revealing hideous scars and tattoos across his body. "Who's brave enough to face me?" "I'll go," Gon stepped forward without hesitation. "No need to strain yourself," came a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see a man in a white lab coat approaching. He had neat dark hair and circular glasses that glinted in the dim light of the chamber. "Who are you?" Ben asked, immediately wary. "I'm Varric," the man replied with a friendly smile. "A fellow examinee. I was separated from my group and ended up here. Seems I'm just in time to help." Ben noticed the man wore an examiner badge with a number in the 300s, he must have entered the tower through a different route. "How did you find us?" Kurapika asked suspiciously. "Pure luck," Varric shrugged. "The tower's passages are interconnected in strange ways. I heard voices and followed them." He turned to Gon. "I'll take this last challenge, if you don't mind. I could use the exercise." Before anyone could object further, Varric stepped onto the platform to face Mechtani. What followed was less a battle and more a systematic dismantling. Varric moved with precise, economical motions, countering each of Mechtani's wild attacks with minimal effort. Within minutes, the prisoner was unconscious at Varric's feet. "That concludes our business here, I believe," Varric said pleasantly, adjusting his glasses as he rejoined the group. With the required 4 victories achieved, a doorway opened in the far wall, revealing a passage leading deeper into the tower. As they proceeded, Ben found himself walking beside Varric. "Thanks for the help back there," he offered cautiously. "Happy to assist," Varric replied. His eyes fell to the Omnitrix on Ben's wrist. That's a fascinating device you have. I couldn't help noticing your earlier transformations during the previous phases. Ben instinctively covered the Omnitrix with his other hand. It's nothing special. No need to be modest, Varric smiled. I'm something of a researcher myself. Particularly interested in anomalies and unusual phenomena. Your device appears to be quite the anomaly in our world. Something in Varric's tone made Ben uncomfortable, but before he could respond, they reached another challenge, a long hallway with a seemingly bottomless chasm in the middle. Two pathways extended partway across the gap, with a large X carved into one and an O into the other. Another vote, Leorio sighed, examining the tablet on the wall. Choose the long path where all can cross, or the short path where only 3 can proceed. Why would we choose the short path? Gon asked, confused. We need to stay together. Because the long path will cost us 50 hours, while the short one only 5, Kurapika read from the tablet. They checked the timer, 42 hours remaining. Taking the long path would mean failure. We have to vote, Killua said grimly, pressing his button. The result appeared, 3x, 3-0, 3 votes for the short path. Leorio exclaimed. Who would abandon their companions? I voted for the short path, Kurapika admitted. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made. So did I, Killua added without apology. And I, Varric nodded. Practicality must sometimes override sentiment. Ben stared at them in shock. We're not leaving anyone behind. What choice do we have? Killua challenged. We're deadlocked anyway. We find another way, Ben insisted. He studied the chasm carefully, then activated the Omnitrix. I can get us all across. The rules, Varric began. Only applied in the fighting challenge, Ben cut him off. There's no rule against using my abilities here. He transformed into a large, moth-like alien with 4 wings. Big Chill can carry you across one by one. Interesting solution, Varric murmured, watching intently as the transformation completed. Ben carried his friends across the chasm one by one, using Big Chill's flight abilities. When only Varric remained, Ben noticed the man studying him with intense scientific curiosity. Your transformations, Varric commented as Ben lifted him. They're genetic in nature, aren't they? Fascinating. How did you know that? Ben asked, suspicious. Varric merely smiled. Observation and deduction. I'm very good at puzzles. The remainder of their journey through Trick Tower presented various challenges, riddles, traps, and physical obstacles. Working together, they navigated each one, though tension lingered after the voting incident. Finally, they reached the bottom level of the tower with just under an hour to spare. Lippo greeted them with congratulations and directions to wait for the other passing contestants. As they rested, Varric approached Ben again. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with your friends earlier. You mentioned being from another dimension. Ben eyed him warily. Maybe. Why? Because interdimensional travel happens to be my specialty, Varric said, his eyes gleaming with interest. I'm one of the hunters Chairman Netero mentioned to you, a researcher of dimensional phenomena. Ben's suspicion gave way to hope. Wait, really? You could help me get home? Potentially, yes. Varric nodded. But I'd need to study your device and understand exactly how you arrived here. After the exam, perhaps we could discuss it further. Before Ben could respond, Gon called him over to join their group. Ben. Come on, they're announcing the 4th phase. Think about it, Varric said with a smile. We'll talk soon. As Ben rejoined his friends, Killua nudged him. What did that guy want? He says he's a dimensional researcher, Ben explained. That he might be able to help me get home. Convenient timing, Kurapika noted with narrowed eyes. Yeah, Ben agreed, glancing back at Varric, who was now speaking with some of the examiners. A little too convenient. With the remaining 24 applicants gathered, Lippo explained the fourth phase, a week-long survival exercise on Zevel Island. Each contestant would be hunting another while being hunted themselves, identified by numbered badges. So it's a game of predator and prey, Ben murmured as he drew his target number from the box, 198. Who'd you get? Gon whispered. Number 198. No idea who that is. I got 199, Gon said, looking around the room. I've got Hisoka, Leorio groaned quietly, showing his slip with 44. Better you than me, Killua replied with a grimace. One by one, they boarded a ship bound for Zevel Island. As the mainland receded into the distance, Ben found a quiet spot on deck to think. The journey through Trick Tower had been challenging, but the exam was growing increasingly dangerous. And then there was Varric, appearing out of nowhere with promises of help. It seemed too perfect, too coincidental. Ben had learned the hard way not to trust convenient solutions, especially when the Omnitrix was involved. But if Varric really could help him get home. Penny for your thoughts, came Kurapika's voice as he joined Ben at the railing. Just wondering how my family's doing, Ben replied, watching the waves. They must be worried sick. Kurapika nodded sympathetically. We'll help you get back to them. But be cautious with Varric. His interest in you seems intense. I noticed. Ben fingered the Omnitrix absently. But if he really does know about dimensional travel, he might be my best chance. Just remember, not all hunters use their licenses for noble purposes. Kurapika's eyes briefly flashed a startling scarlet before returning to their normal gray. Some have very personal agendas. As Zevel Island came into view on the horizon, Ben took a deep breath of the salty air. Whatever challenges awaited on that island, he'd face them as he always had, one transformation at a time. Prepare to disembark, called the ship's captain. The fourth phase of the hunter exam begins now. Ben gave the Omnitrix a reassuring pat. Let's do this. Chapter 2, Power and Purpose. The moment Ben's feet hit the beach of Zevel Island, he was already scanning for cover. 24 hunters, each targeting another, with only a week to steal their badges. Not exactly the summer vacation he'd planned. Remember, called the proctor from the departing ship, you need 6 points to pass. 4 for your target's badge, 3 for keeping your own, and 1 point for any other badge. Ben ducked into the tree lean, the Omnitrix cool against his wrist. First things first, figure out who 198 was and how to track them down. The dense jungle provided good cover as he moved inland, listening for any signs of pursuit. I could use Wildmutt to track them, he muttered to himself, cycling through his aliens. Or maybe, a rustle from above was his only warning. Ben rolled sideways as something slammed into the ground where he'd stood. A tall, gangly man with a pointed nose and tiny round glasses straightened up, grinning maniacally. Found you, 99. The man cackled, brandishing 3 wickedly curved knives. I'm 198, Kenmi, and you're my target. Ben blinked. Talk about convenient. Hand over your badge and I'll make this painless, Kenmi demanded, twirling his knives. Ben sized up his opponent, fast, probably skilled with those blades, but nothing he hadn't handled before. Sorry, not happening. Then we'll do this the fun way. Kenmi lunged forward, blade slashing in a complicated pattern. Ben twisted away from the first strike, the knife missing his chest by inches. The second blade caught his sleeve, tearing the fabric. Too close. He needed space. Time for a classic. Ben slammed down on the Omnitrix. In a flash of green light, 4 arms stood in his place, a 12-foot-tall, 4-armed, red-skinned powerhouse. What the? Kenmi stumbled back, eyes widening behind his glasses. Surprise. 4 arms grinned, cracking his knuckles. Still want to play with knives? Kenmi recovered quickly, darting forward with unexpected speed. His blades bounced harmlessly off Four-Arm's tough skin. Ben caught the man's wrist with one massive hand, careful not to crush it. Game over, Four-Arms rumbled, holding Kenmi dangling a foot off the ground. After a thorough search, Ben found badge 198 hidden in Kenmi's boot, along with his own 99 that the man had somehow already swiped during their brief scuffle. "How did you?" Ben started, impressed despite himself. Kenmi just smirked. "Professional pickpocket before I decided to try for a hunter license. Old habits." Ben considered his options. He had the 6 points needed to pass now, but leaving Kenmi free to hunt others seemed risky. "I'm going to hang on to your badge until the end of the phase. No hard feelings." He used a vine to secure Kenmi to a tree, tight enough to hold him but not enough to hurt. "Someone will find you eventually. You'll regret this, shapeshifter." Kenmi called after him as Ben, back in human form, disappeared into the jungle. With his target acquired on literally the first day, Ben found himself with nearly a week to kill on the island. He spent it exploring, setting up camp in a secluded cave, and occasionally checking on his friends from a distance. He spotted Gon painstakingly stalking a tall, bald man who Ben recognized as one of the stronger candidates. Killua seemed to have already acquired his target's badge and was leisurely fishing by a stream. Of Kurapika and Leorio, he saw no sign, which was probably for the best if Leorio was hunting Hisoka. On the third day, as Ben was collecting fruit for lunch, the jungle around him went eerily silent. The hair on his neck stood up. Someone was watching him. "Whoever's there, just come out," Ben called, hand hovering over the Omnitrix. Slow, deliberate clapping came from behind a massive tree. Hisoka emerged, his painted face fixed in that disturbing smile. "Good instincts," the magician purred. "You sensed me despite my efforts. Interesting." Ben tensed. "Are you hunting me?" No, Hisoka waved dismissively. "I've already collected my badges. I'm simply observing the unripe fruits." His eyes flicked to the Omnitrix. "Though some fruits develop in most unusual ways. If you're not here to fight, what do you want?" Ben kept his distance, ready to transform at the first sign of trouble. Hisoka produced a playing card, twirling it between his fingers. "Merely to satisfy my curiosity. Those transformations of yours, they're quite the ability. Not Nen, though. Something else entirely." "Nen? What's that?" Hisoka's smile widened fractionally. "How fascinating. You possess such power, yet know nothing of Nen." He took a step closer, and Ben instinctively stepped back. "It makes me wonder what would happen if that power were enhanced." Before Ben could respond, Hisoka flicked his wrist. The playing card disappeared. "But that's for another time. For now, I'll let you ripen a bit more." With that cryptic statement, Hisoka vanished into the jungle, leaving Ben thoroughly unsettled. The remaining days on the island passed without major incident. When the week ended, Ben boarded the returning ship with both badges safely secured. 9 applicants had passed the 4th phase, including Gon, Killua, Kurapika, Leorio, and, to Ben's mild annoyance, Varrick. "Congratulations on passing," Varrick said, sidling up to Ben as they sailed back to the mainland. "I must say, I'm increasingly fascinated by your abilities." "Thanks," Ben replied noncommittally. "How'd you do it?" "Get your badges, I mean." Varrick adjusted his glasses with a small smile. "Oh, I have a few tricks of my own. Nothing as flashy as your transformations, but effective nonetheless." Before their conversation could continue, Chairman Netero summoned each remaining applicant for a brief interview. When Ben's turn came, he entered the chairman's cabin to find the old man sitting cross-legged on a cushion. "Ah, young Ben Tennyson," Netero greeted him. "Please, sit." Ben sat across from him, crossing his legs awkwardly. I have just a few questions before the final phase, Netero explained. First, among the other 8 applicants, who do you keep your eye on the most? Ben thought for a moment. Honestly? Probably Hisoka. Something about him just screams danger. Netero nodded, unsurprised. And who would you least want to fight? Gon, Ben answered immediately. He's become a good friend. I wouldn't want to have to take him down. I see, Netero stroked his beard. And what is your reason for becoming a hunter? I told you before, I need to find a way home, Ben said. But. He hesitated, I've also started to care about what happens here. My friends, this world. It's not just about getting back anymore. Netero's eyes twinkled. Growth already. Excellent. He waved a hand. That's all for now. The final phase begins tomorrow. The final phase turned out to be a tournament, but not the kind Ben was expecting. The matchups were displayed in a peculiar bracket where winners were eliminated and only losers continued fighting. The last person remaining will fail, Netero explained. Everyone else will become a licensed hunter. Ben's first match was against a man named Bedoro, a martial arts master. As they faced off in the tournament hall before the other applicants and a panel of judges, Ben decided to fight without transforming. You're not using your special ability? Bedoro asked as they circled each other. Ben shook his head. Seems only fair to give you a fighting chance. The old martial artist smiled slightly. Your confidence may be your undoing, young man. Bedoro moved with surprising speed for his age, his strikes precise and powerful. Ben blocked the first flurry of attacks, but a sweep kick caught him off guard, sending him sprawling. Point to consider, Bedoro said as Ben rolled back to his feet, pride comes before a fall. Ben grinned, wiping blood from his lip. Who said it was pride? He activated the Omnitrix, transforming into a blue, velociraptor-like alien. XLR-8 just wanted a warm-up. In a blur of motion, Ben zipped around Bedoro, landing dozens of quick strikes before the martial artist could even react. When he finally stopped, Bedoro was on his knees, gasping. I concede, the old master managed. With that victory, Ben was out of the tournament, officially becoming a hunter. He watched the remaining matches with interest. Hisoka defeated his opponent effortlessly, then whispered something that made the man surrender. Kurapika won through tactical brilliance. Gon showed incredible tenacity against a much larger opponent. The most shocking moment came during Killua's match against the needle-headed man, Gitoraka. As the fight began, Gitoraka removed the pins from his face, his features shifting to reveal a handsome young man with long black hair. Illumi, Killua whispered, suddenly pale. Brother. What followed was less a fight and more psychological torture. Illumi methodically broke down Killua's confidence, claiming he was incapable of having friends, that he was born only to kill. By the end, Killua's eyes had gone blank. He walked away without fighting, disqualified. What the hell was that? Ben demanded as Gon confronted the stunned judges. You can't let that count. But the rules were the rules. Killua was failed, while everyone else, including a smirking Varrick, received their hunter licenses. The aftermath was chaotic. Gon, furious about what happened to Killua, broke his arm confronting Illumi. Kurapika and Leorio had to hold him back from doing worse. Ben, equally angry, found himself face to face with Varrick as the new hunters departed. A shame about your white-haired friend, Varrick commented, examining his new license. But perhaps for the best. Now, about our discussion, it'll have to wait, Ben cut him off. We're going to find Killua first. Varrick's smile tightened. Of course. But don't wait too long. Dimensional rifts have a way of expanding if left unaddressed. Before Ben could ask what he meant, Varrick melted into the crowd of departing hunters. Saditz, their first examiner, provided crucial information. Killua had returned to Kukuru Mountain, home of the infamous Zoldyck family of assassins. Together with Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio, Ben set off to retrieve their friend. So Killua comes from a family of assassins, Ben mused as their train sped through the countryside. That explains a few things. It doesn't change who he is, Gon insisted, his arm in a sling. He's our friend, and we're bringing him back. The journey to Kokoro Mountain was arduous, culminating in a confrontation with the Zoldyck's fearsome butler, Canary, and eventually Killua's mother and younger brother. Through sheer persistence, and a little help from Alien X when no one was looking to subtly alter probability, they managed to reach Killua, who was surprised but grateful for the rescue. "You guys actually came for me?" Killua asked, seeming genuinely puzzled as they left his family's massive estate behind. "Of course we did, dummy," Ben nudged him with an elbow. "That's what friends do." With the group reunited, they faced the question of what to do next. Kurapika intended to pursue the phantom troop who had massacred his clan. Leorio needed to study for medical school. Gon wanted to find his father, a legendary hunter. "What about you, Ben?" Gon asked as they discussed plans over dinner at a hotel. "Still trying to get home?" Ben nodded, twisting the Omnitrix absently. "Yeah, but Varric said something weird about dimensional rifts expanding. I need to figure out what he meant." "We should train first," Killua suggested. "Especially you and Gon. You need to learn Nen." "That's the second time I've heard that word," Ben said. Hisoka mentioned it too. "What exactly is it?" Killua and Kurapika exchanged glances. "It's the ability to control your life energy," Kurapika explained. "Every living thing has it, but few learn to manipulate it. With proper training, you can use it for attack, defense, special abilities," Killua added. "All the strongest hunters use Nen." Ben considered this. If he could learn this Nen thing, maybe he could enhance his alien transformations. Or even figure out how to use the Omnitrix to open a portal home. "Alright, I'm in," Ben decided. "Where do we start?" The answer was Heaven's Arena, a towering skyscraper where fighters battled for money and glory. Gon, Killua, and Ben registered as competitors, quickly advancing through the lower floors with ease. "This is too easy," Ben complained after winning his third match with a single punch as forearms. "Just wait," Killua promised. "After the 200th floor, everyone uses Nen. That's where the Real Challenge begins." Sure enough, when they reached the 200th floor, they encountered an invisible wall of pressure blocking the hallway, Nen used as a barrier by a man named Hisoka. "You're not ready for this floor," Hisoka informed them, his aura manifesting as a purple haze around his body. "Unless..." Gon and Killua struggled against the pressure, but Ben found himself curious. The Omnitrix was glowing slightly, reacting to the energy Hisoka was emitting. "What's it doing?" Killua asked, noticing the watch's reaction. "I don't know," Ben replied. "But I think..." He activated the Omnitrix, transforming into Ghost Freak, a phantom-like alien with a single eye and striped skin. The pressure from Hisoka's Nen immediately lessened. "Fascinating," Hisoka murmured. "Your transformations interact with Nen in unexpected ways." Before they could explore this further, a man in a tracksuit appeared, effortlessly dispelling Hisoka's aura with his own. "That's enough, Hisoka," the man said firmly. "I'll take it from here." "Wing-san!" Gon exclaimed, recognizing the man. Wing, it turned out, was a Nen master who had been observing Gon. He agreed to teach all three of them properly, warning that using Nen without training was like running with your eyes closed. The training began with meditation, learning to feel the life energy flowing through their bodies. For Gon and Killua, progress was steady. For Ben, it was complicated. "Your energy flows differently," Wing observed as Ben attempted to create his aura shroud. "It's as if it's being diverted." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. "It's the watch, isn't it? It's somehow interacting with my Nen." Wing nodded thoughtfully. The Omnitrix, as you call it, seems to be drawing on your aura, filtering it through its own energy system. Is that bad? Ben asked. Not necessarily. Just different. Wing adjusted his glasses. Try transforming while consciously directing your aura. Ben transformed into Heatblast, a fire-based alien made of magma and flame. As he did, he focused on the warm energy Wing had taught him to feel. The result was immediate and spectacular. Heatblast's flames burned twice as bright, tinged with the white-blue color of Ben's aura. Whoa! Ben held up his hands, watching the enhanced flames dance across his palms. This is awesome. Control, Ben, Wing cautioned. Power without control is merely destruction waiting to happen. Over the following weeks, Ben learned to channel his Nen into his transformations, enhancing their natural abilities. Diamond Head's crystals became unbreakable. XLR-8 moved so fast he left afterimages. Even Grey Matter's intelligence seemed sharper, processing information at unprecedented speeds. Meanwhile, Gon and Killua developed their own techniques. Gon focused his Nen into his fists for devastating punches, while Killua combined his assassin training with electric-type Nen. Their training was interrupted by a call from Kurapika, who had been investigating the Phantom Troop. They're gathering in York New City for the annual auction, he informed them. I'm going there to confront them. Alone? Ben asked incredulously. From what you've told us about these guys, that sounds like suicide. I've been training too, Kurapika replied, a steely edge to his voice. But I wouldn't refuse help from friends. York New City greeted them with a skyline of glittering skyscrapers and streets crowded with wealthy auction-goers. Kurapika, now working as a bodyguard for a rich collector, had access to valuable intelligence on the Phantom Troop's movements. They're after the auction items, Kurapika explained in his employer's luxury hotel suite. Particularly items with unusual properties. Like the Omnitrix, Ben realized with a frown. Precisely. Kurapika nodded grimly. If they learn of its existence, you'll become a target. Let them try, Ben said confidently. I've handled worse than thieves before. Kurapika's eyes flashed scarlet momentarily. Don't underestimate the troop. They slaughtered my entire clan for our scarlet eyes. They're not just thieves, they're monsters. The gravity of Kurapika's vendetta sobered Ben. This wasn't just another alien hunt, this was personal for his friend. We'll be careful, he promised. Their first encounter with the Phantom Troop came sooner than expected. While exploring the city with Gon and Killua, Ben spotted two suspicious figures following a well-dressed businessman. Those two, he whispered, nodding subtly. The blonde guy with the top knot and the short guy with the scarf. They've been tailing that man for 3 blocks. Troop members? Killua suggested, casually turning as if admiring a store window. Let's find out, Gon said, already changing direction to follow them. The pursuit led them to an abandoned warehouse district. The businessman, clearly terrified, was now surrounded by more figures in dark clothing. Definitely the troop, Killua confirmed, recognizing several from Kurapika's descriptions. We should call him. Ben watched in horror as one of the troop, a man with slick-back dark hair and a cross on his forehead, casually broke the businessman's finger. No time. They're torturing him. We can't just attack them head-on, Killua hissed. They're too strong. Then we'll be smart about it. Ben activated the Omnitrix, scrolling to an alien he rarely used. Get ready to grab that guy when I create a distraction. He transformed into Ghost Freak, his body becoming intangible and invisible. Floating silently, Ben approached the group of Phantom Troop members. The leader, Crawlo, according to Kurapika's information, was questioning the businessman about auction security. Ben waited until all eyes were on the interrogation, then unleashed a haunting, echoing wail that reverberated through the warehouse. The troop members tensed, looking around for the source. Ben followed with targeted poltergeist activity, knocking over crates and creating cold spots around different members. "Something's here," said a large man with a samurai sword. "I can feel it." "Spread out," Chrollo ordered calmly. "Find whatever's causing this." In the confusion, Gon and Killua darted in with incredible speed, snatched the businessman, and disappeared before the troop could react. Ben continued his ghostly distraction for another minute before following, careful not to lead them back to his friends. "That was too close," Killua said once they were safely away, the traumatized businessman having been handed over to the police. "They would have killed us all if they'd caught us." "But they didn't," Ben pointed out. "And we saved that guy's life." Gon nodded in agreement. "We should tell Kurapika what we saw, though." Kurapika was both grateful for the information and furious that they'd risked confronting the troop. "Their abilities are beyond anything you've faced," he warned. "Even with your transformations, Ben, you're not prepared for what they can do." "Then prepare us," Ben challenged. "You want to take them down? You'll need help." After some reluctance, Kurapika agreed to share what he knew about each troop member's abilities. The information was troubling. Each possessed unique nin techniques that made them formidable opponents. "The key is isolation," Kurapika explained. "Together, they cover each other's weaknesses. Alone, they might be vulnerable." Their chance came when Kurapika's employer received intelligence about a troop member traveling separately from the others. Yuvajin, a hulking man with enhancement-type nin that made him virtually indestructible, had been dispatched to intercept a shipment of auction goods. "He's mine," Kurapika said with cold determination. "Not alone," Ben insisted. "I'm coming with you." After a heated argument, Kurapika relented, allowing Ben to accompany him as backup. They tracked Yuvajin to a remote area where he was single-handedly decimating a convoy of armed guards. "Wait for my signal," Kurapika instructed, his eyes already glowing scarlet as he prepared his special nin chains. Ben watched in awe as Kurapika confronted Yuvajin. The blonde's chains, specifically created to fight the Phantom Troop, wrapped around the larger man with surprising effectiveness. What followed was not so much a battle as a systematic dismantling, Kurapika's rage-fueled power overwhelming even Yuvajin's incredible strength. When it was over, Kurapika stood victorious over the defeated troop member. "For the Kurta clan," he whispered, delivering the final blow. Ben approached slowly, stunned by the ferocity he'd witnessed from his usually composed friend. "Kurapika." "Don't," Kurapika cut him off, his eyes fading from scarlet back to their normal gray. "This is what I've trained for. What I've lived for." "And after you've killed them all?" Ben asked quietly. "What then?" Kurapika had no answer. The confrontation with Yuvajin had consequences. The Phantom Troop, enraged by their comrade's death, intensified their activities in York New. Meanwhile, Varric reappeared, seeking Ben out at their hotel. "I've been monitoring unusual energy signatures throughout the city," Varric explained, spreading a map across the table. "There's been a spike in dimensional fluctuations since your arrival." Ben frowned at the map, which showed several glowing hotspots. "What does that mean?" "It means," Varric said gravely, "that your presence here is causing instability. The longer you stay, the more these fluctuations will grow." "Are you saying I'm damaging this world somehow?" Ben asked, alarmed. "Not yet," Varric adjusted his glasses. "But eventually, yes. Your Omnitrix is generating energy patterns incompatible with our dimensional frequency. It needs to be either removed or returned to its proper reality." Gon, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "You can't remove the Omnitrix. It's part of Ben." "I'm aware," Varric sighed. "Which is why I've been developing a way to send Ben home. But I need to study how the Omnitrix interacts with our world's energy, specifically, with Nen." Ben considered this. If what Varric said was true, staying here could eventually harm this world. But trusting Varric completely still felt risky. "What exactly do you need from me?" Ben asked cautiously. Access to the Omnitrix while you're using Nen, Varric replied. I need to measure the energy interactions, collect data for my calculations. And how long will this take? A few days at most, Varric promised. Then, if my theories are correct, I can create a dimensional doorway to send you home. After discussing it with his friends, Ben reluctantly agreed. Varric set up equipment in an abandoned warehouse, carefully monitoring the Omnitrix as Ben cycled through transformations while channeling his Nen. Remarkable, Varric murmured as Ben, in the form of Diamond Head, created crystal structures infused with glowing Nen energy. The Omnitrix isn't just allowing your transformations, it's adapting to this world's energy system. Is that good or bad? Ben asked, reverting to human form. Both, Varric admitted. It means the Omnitrix is more versatile than I imagined, but also that its influence on our dimensional stability is more profound. Their research was interrupted when Killua burst into the warehouse, breathing hard. The troop knows about Ben. They're coming. How? Ben demanded, already activating the Omnitrix. Someone's been talking. Killua's eyes darted to Varric, who held up his hands defensively. I've told no one about Ben's abilities, Varric insisted. Doesn't matter now, Ben said, transforming into XLR-8. We need to warn the others and get somewhere safe. They barely made it back to the hotel before the attack came. 4 Phantom Troop members, Maki, Finks, Phaeton, and Shalnark, ambushed them in the lobby. That's him, Maki pointed at Ben. The shapeshifter. The boss wants to meet you, Finks added with a predatory grin. Alive, preferably, but not necessarily intact. Ben transformed into 4 arms, positioning himself protectively in front of his friends. Not interested in your invitation. Wasn't asking, Phaeton said softly, drawing a sword. What followed was chaos. Ben fought Finks and Phaeton, his forearm strength barely keeping pace with their incredible speed and power. Gon and Killua engaged Maki and Shalnark, using their newly developed Nen abilities to surprising effect. Varric, meanwhile, slipped away during the confusion, something Ben noticed but couldn't address in the heat of battle. This isn't working. Killua shouted as Maki's Nen threads constricted around his arm. We need to split up. Ben nodded, hitting the Omnitrix symbol to transform into Stinkfly, a large, insect-like alien with 4 wings and a pointed tail. Grab on, he called to Gon and Killua. As they latched onto his legs, Ben sprayed slime at their attackers, temporarily blinding them. With a powerful beat of his wings, he crashed through a window and took to the sky. They'll follow us, Killua warned as they flew over the city. I know, Ben replied. But they can't track us if they can't see us. He transformed again, this time into Big Chill, turning himself and his passengers intangible and invisible. They phased through buildings and finally came to rest on a secluded rooftop miles away. That was too close, Gon panted, checking a cut on his arm. And Varric disappeared, Ben noted grimly. Convenient timing. You think he's working with the troop? Killua asked, eyes narrowing. I don't know, Ben admitted. But I don't think his interest in the Omnitrix is just about helping me get home. They contacted Kurapika, who had been pursuing his own lead on the troop's leader. Together, they regrouped at a new location, an abandoned subway station beneath the city. The auction is tomorrow night, Kurapika informed them. The troop will make their move then. And now they're after Ben too. Which means we need a new plan, Ben said. One that uses their interest in me to our advantage. As they strategized, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Varric's warnings about dimensional instability, the troop's sudden interest in the Omnitrix, the way his transformations interacted with Nen, it all seemed connected, but he couldn't see how. The night of the auction arrived with a tension that hung over York New City like a storm cloud. Ben, disguised as a waiter thanks to a quick transformation into Ditto, and some creative use of the alien's self-duplication abilities, infiltrated the auction venue. In position, he whispered into a communicator Kurapika had provided. No sign of the troop yet. They'll come, Kurapika's voice crackled through the earpiece. Be ready. As wealthy bidders filled the auction hall, Ben noticed a familiar face across the room, Varric, dressed in an expensive suit, examining the catalogue of items with apparent interest. Varric is here, Ben reported quietly. Looking very comfortable for someone who was almost captured by the Phantom Troop yesterday. Keep an eye on him, Kurapika instructed. But don't engage yet. The auction began, with rare artifacts and treasures fetching astronomical prices. Ben circulated through the crowd, serving champagne while keeping watch for any troop members. Halfway through the proceedings, the lights suddenly cut out. Screams erupted from the darkness, followed by the sound of breaking glass. When emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, several display cases were empty, and black-clad figures were disappearing through the ceiling. They're here. Ben shouted into his communicator, already activating the Omnitrix. Before he could transform, something wrapped around his wrist, a thin, nearly invisible thread that yanked him off balance. Maki appeared beside him, her nen strings binding his arms. The boss wants to see you, she said flatly. Don't resist, or I'll cut off your hand to get that watch. Ben froze. Losing the Omnitrix wasn't an option. Fine, he gritted out. Maki escorted him through the panicked crowd and up to the roof, where the other troop members were gathered with their stolen goods. At their center stood Krallo Lucifer, the calm, dark-haired leader whose presence commanded respect even from his deadly followers. Benjamin Tennyson, Krallo greeted him. I've heard fascinating things about your ability. Let me guess, Ben replied coldly. Varric told you. Krallo smiled slightly. Dr. Varric has been quite forthcoming about your unique situation. A visitor from another dimension, with a device capable of genetic transformation. Quite the prize. I'm not a prize, Ben growled. And neither is the Omnitrix. Everything has value to someone, Krallo replied. In your case, to many someones. Did you know there are those who would pay billions for interdimensional technology? The auction was merely a cover, you were always our primary target. Before Ben could respond, the roof access door burst open. Kurapika stood there, chains dangling from his hand, eyes blazing scarlet. Behind him were Dawn and Killua, their auras flaring visibly. Let him go, Kurapika demanded. Krallo studied the newcomers with mild interest. The chain user who killed Yuvajin. And friends. How convenient. The troop members tensed for battle, but Krallo raised a hand to halt them. Before we begin what will undoubtedly be a destructive encounter, perhaps we should hear from our mutual acquaintance. From behind a ventilation unit stepped Varric, his usual lab coat replaced by more practical dark clothing. I did try to warn you about the dimensional instability, Ben. It wasn't a lie. What's he talking about? Gon asked, not lowering his guard. Varric sighed. The Omnitrix is creating tears in the fabric between dimensions. Small ones now, but growing. If left unchecked, they could eventually allow things to cross over. Dangerous things. And you're helping the Phantom Troop because... Ben prompted angrily. Because they have resources I need, Varric replied. And because Krallo understands the potential better than anyone. Krallo opened a book he'd been carrying. Interdimensional travel has been theoretical until now. With your device, we can make it reality. Imagine the possibilities, new worlds to explore, new treasures to acquire. To steal, you mean, Kurapika spat. One man's theft is another's liberation, Krallo replied mildly. The choice before you is simple, cooperate and help us understand the Omnitrix's dimensional properties, or force a confrontation none of you will likely survive. Ben caught Killua's eye, noting the slight nod. They had prepared for this. Slowly, Ben raised his hands in apparent surrender. If I help you, my friends walk away unharmed. Ben, no. Gon protested. You have my word, Krallo agreed smoothly. Then let me show you what the Omnitrix can really do, Ben said, activating the device. In a flash of green light, he transformed, not into any of his usual battle aliens, but into Clockwork, a copper mechanical being with a key-like protrusion on his head. What is this form? Varric asked, leaning forward with interest. This, Ben said, his voice now mechanical and echoing, is a Chronosapien. Time manipulation. Before anyone could react, Ben unleashed Clockwork's power, amplified by his newly trained Nen. Time slowed to a crawl around the troop members, leaving only Ben and his friends able to move normally. It won't hold long, Ben warned. Run. They dashed for the exit, Kurapika pausing only to throw something at Krallo's feet, a small device that began beeping rapidly. Once clear of the building, they heard the explosion behind them. Not large enough to kill the troop members, but certainly enough to disrupt whatever plans they had for immediate pursuit. A time manipulation alien? Killua asked as they raced through back alleys. Why haven't you used that before? It drains the Omnitrix faster than most transformations, Ben explained, back in human form and already looking tired. And it's hard to control. But it was our best shot at getting away. Varric's working with the troop, Kurapika stated grimly. He's been using you to study the Omnitrix for them. But was he telling the truth about the dimensional instability? Gon wondered. Ben frowned. That's what bothers me. I think he was. Which means we have two problems. The Phantom Troop wants the Omnitrix, and it might be causing damage to this world just by being here. They found temporary shelter in an abandoned building at the edge of the city, where Leorio was waiting with medical supplies and food. You all look terrible, he commented as he treated their various injuries. Did the plan work? Yes and no, Killua replied. We escaped, but now we know the troop is specifically targeting Ben's watch. And our supposed ally Varric is working with them. Leorio whistled low. That complicates things. As the others discussed their next move, Ben stepped away, examining the Omnitrix. If Varric was right about the dimensional instability, staying here much longer could put this entire world at risk. But leaving would mean abandoning his friends to face the Phantom Troop alone. Thinking of leaving? Kurapika asked quietly, joining him by the window. Ben sighed. I don't want to. But if my being here is causing these dimensional tears Varric mentioned. We can handle the troop, Kurapika assured him, though his expression suggested otherwise. Your world needs you too. But Varric's working with them now, Ben pointed out. If anyone knows how to get me home, it's him. Then we'll just have to convince him to help us instead, Gon said, having overheard their conversation. You mean capture him? Leorio asked. Killua nodded. Exactly. If Varric's the expert on dimensional travel, and he needs the Omnitrix for his research, then he needs Ben. We use that. It's risky, Ben cautioned. The troop won't let him go easily if he's valuable to them. We've faced worse odds, Gon said with his characteristic optimism. They spent the next day planning their move. Kurapika's contacts provided intelligence on troop movements, allowing them to identify a pattern. Varric was being escorted between locations by rotating pairs of troop members, presumably to continue his research at different sites. There, Killua pointed to a map. That's our best chance. When Phaeton and Shalnark are guarding him. They're dangerous, but predictable. I'll handle them, Ben decided. You guys get Varric. Despite objections that he shouldn't face two troop members alone, Ben insisted. I've got more than a dozen aliens to work with, plus Nen enhancement now. If anyone can keep them busy, it's me. The ambush was set for nightfall in an industrial area where Varric was scheduled to transfer between troop safehouses. Ben positioned himself on a rooftop, watching as the three figures approached below. Remember, Killua's voice came through his earpiece. Just distract them long enough for us to grab Varric. Don't try to win. Got it, Ben confirmed, activating the Omnitrix. He transformed into Swampfire, a plant-based alien with regenerative abilities and control over fire and plants. Using his powers, Ben caused the ground around the three men to suddenly sprout thick vines, entangling their feet. "It's the shapeshifter!" Phaeton shouted, slicing through the vines with his sword. Ben leapt down from the rooftop, hands igniting with flame. "Looking for me?" Phaeton and Shaunark immediately moved to engage, while Varric backed away, right into the path of Gon and Killua, who emerged from the shadows to subdue him. "You think this will work?" Shaunark laughed, producing a cell phone-like device. "We've studied your transformations. We're prepared." Ben grinned, the fibrous material of his Swampfire face stretching. "Study this." He channeled his Nen, something they hadn't seen him do before. The flames in his hands burned blue-white, and the plants around them grew at impossible speeds, creating a dense jungle in seconds. More importantly, the Nen-enhanced plants began absorbing the aura of everything they touched. "What is this?" Phaeton hissed as his Nen was drained by the writhing vegetation. "A little trick I've been working on," Ben replied. "Turns out Swampfire can absorb more than just water and sunlight." The battle was fierce but brief. While Ben's Nen-enhanced Swampfire kept the two troop members occupied, his friend successfully captured Varric and retreated. Ben held out just long enough to ensure their escape before transforming into XLR-8 and racing away at speeds even Phaeton couldn't match. They regrouped at an abandoned tunnel beneath the city, where Varric sat bound to a chair, looking more annoyed than frightened. "This is pointless," he told them as Ben arrived. "The Phantom Troop will find us, and you'll have accomplished nothing. Except getting you away from them," Ben countered, reverting to human form. "Now, you're going to tell us everything, about the dimensional instability, about why the troop wants the Omnitrix, and about how to get me home." Varric sighed, adjusting his glasses as best he could with bound hands. "Very well. The truth, then." What followed was a disturbing revelation. Varric explained that he had indeed been researching dimensional travel for years, initially for academic purposes. When he detected Ben's arrival in their world, he saw an opportunity to advance his research by decades. "The Omnitrix doesn't just allow transformation," Varric explained. "It contains the means to punch through dimensional barriers. That's how you arrived here in the first place." "And the instability?" Kurapika prompted. "Real, and growing," Varric confirmed. "Each time you transform, the Omnitrix releases energy that weakens the barriers between dimensions. Small tiers have already formed throughout York New City. So why work with the Phantom Troop?" Gon demanded. Varric looked uncomfortable for the first time. "Because they have something I need, a rare artifact called the Interdimensional Codex. It contains crucial calculations for stabilizing dimensional gateways." "And let me guess," Ben said sarcastically, "they're only going to give it to you if you deliver the Omnitrix to them." "Precisely," Varric nodded. "Without both the Codex and the Omnitrix, any attempt to send you home would likely result in catastrophic dimensional collapse." The implications were clear. They needed to somehow get the Codex from the Phantom Troop while keeping the Omnitrix out of their hands, all while racing against growing dimensional instability. "Where's the Codex now?" Killua asked. "With Krallo," Varric replied. "He keeps it with him at all times." Ben paced the small tunnel, thinking furiously. "So we need a new plan. One that lets us get close to Krallo without walking into a trap." "I might have an idea," Kurapika said slowly. "But it's extremely dangerous, and requires perfect timing." The plan Kurapika proposed was audacious: use the growing dimensional instability to their advantage. If Varric was correct, the tiers were largest in places where Ben had transformed multiple times. By deliberately creating a massive tear in a controlled location, they could potentially force the troop to bring the Codex to them. "You're suggesting we intentionally rip open a hole between dimensions?" Leo Rio asked incredulously. "A small, controlled tier," Kurapika clarified. "Enough to demonstrate the danger and force their hand, but not enough to cause permanent damage." That's insanely risky, Ben said, though he was already considering how it might work. Do we have a choice? Gon asked. The tiers are growing anyway, right Varric? Varric nodded reluctantly. Yes. Within days, they'll begin expanding exponentially. Then we do it, Ben decided. But we need to be smart about this. Where's the safest place to create a controlled tier? The abandoned quarry outside the city, Varric suggested after some thought. Remote, contained, minimal risk to civilians if something goes wrong. With their plan set, they made preparations. Varric, now convinced their goals aligned, provided technical guidance on how Ben could maximize the dimensional effects of his transformations. Rapid switching between forms should accelerate the process, he explained. Particularly between aliens with dramatically different energy signatures. The following evening, they positioned themselves at the quarry. Kurapika had sent a message to the Phantom Troop through his underworld contacts, a demonstration of dimensional technology, with an invitation for Krallo to bring the codex for potential collaboration. They'll know it's a trap, Killua pointed out as they waited. Of course, Kurapika agreed. But curiosity is a powerful motivator, especially for Krallo. He'll come, if only to see what we're capable of. As darkness fell, Ben stood at the center of the quarry, the Omnitrix primed and ready. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, while Varric monitored equipment he'd hastily assembled to measure dimensional energy. They're here, Killua called softly, his enhanced senses detecting movement in the surrounding forest. Ben nodded, taking a deep breath. Show time. He activated the Omnitrix, transforming into Heat Blast. Immediately, he channeled his Nen into the transformation, causing the flames covering his body to burn with incredible intensity. Before the energy could dissipate, he hit the Omnitrix symbol again, switching to Big Chill. The rapid temperature change created a visible distortion in the air around him. Again. Varric called, eyes fixed on his instruments. The energy fluctuations are building. Ben cycled rapidly through transformations, Diamond Head, XLR-8, Four Arms, Ghost Freak, Wild Mutt, Grey Matter, and back again. With each change, the air seemed to warp more dramatically, until finally, after transforming into Alien X and immediately back to human, a visible tear appeared in the space before him, a jagged crack in reality itself, through which could be glimpsed strange, swirling colors and impossible geometries. It's working! Varric exclaimed. The tear is stable but contained. From the shadows surrounding the quarry emerged several figures. Krallo Lucifer walked calmly toward them, flanked by Maki, Phaeton, Finks, and several other troop members. Impressive demonstration, Krallo commented, his eyes fixed on the dimensional tear. Though exceedingly reckless. Ben, exhausted from the rapid transformations but standing firm, nodded toward a book Krallo carried. That the Codex? Indeed, Krallo confirmed. The question is, what do you intend to do now? This standoff benefits no one. We need the Codex to send Ben home and seal the dimensional tiers, Kurapika stated, his chains ready. You need the Omnitrix for your own purposes. Seems we're at an impasse. Krallo considered this, his calm expression never wavering. Perhaps not. What if I proposed a compromise? We use both the Codex and the Omnitrix together, under supervision from all parties. Once the dimensional issues are resolved, Ben returns to his world with his device, and we retain the Codex. Why would you give up pursuing the Omnitrix? Killua asked skeptically. Because the alternative appears to be dimensional collapse, Krallo replied simply. Even the Phantom Troop requires a world to exist in. The sudden reasonableness was suspicious, but Ben was running out of options. The dimensional tear was growing despite Varric's assurances of stability, and he could feel the Omnitrix heating up on his wrist, a sign it was reacting to the proximity of the tear. We work together, Ben decided, but at neutral ground, with our people monitoring every step. After tense negotiations, they agreed to move to a research facility Varric had used before contacting the troop. The dimensional tear was temporarily sealed using a combination of Ben's clockwork transformation and techniques from the Codex, though the effort left Ben drained almost to the point of collapse. At the facility, a strange alliance formed. Troop members stood guard alongside Gon and Killua, while Varric, Krallo, and Kurapika worked to decipher the Codex's instructions. Ben, meanwhile, rested and recovered, the Omnitrix occasionally flickering as if communicating with the dimensional energies around it. The Codex describes a ritual, Varric explained on the second day. A way to channel energy through a dimensional anchor, which is what the Omnitrix has effectively become, to repair tears and create controlled passages between worlds. So I could go home? Ben asked hopefully. Yes, Varric nodded. But the process requires incredible precision. Too much energy, and the tear becomes a permanent rift. Too little, and it collapses, potentially trapping you between dimensions. And how do we ensure precision? Kurapika asked. Krallo held up the Codex. That's where this becomes essential. It contains mathematical formulas for calculating exactly how much energy is needed. Preparations took another full day. The largest tear had reopened despite their temporary seal, and new ones were appearing throughout York New City. News reports spoke of strange sightings and inexplicable phenomena, signs that the barriers between dimensions were weakening. We need to hurry, Varric urged as they finalized the equipment setup. The tears are becoming unstable faster than I anticipated. The ritual, as Varric called it, was less mystical and more scientific than the name suggested. Ben would transform into clockwork, using its temporal abilities to slow the dimensional tears while channeling energy through the Omnitrix according to the Codex's calculations. Ready? Varric asked, monitoring instruments connected to the Omnitrix via thin wires. Ben nodded, looking at his friends gathered around him. Gon, eyes wide with determination. Killua, outwardly calm but clearly concerned. Kurapika, vigilant for any betrayal from the troop. Leorio, medical kit ready in case something went wrong. I guess this is goodbye, Ben said quietly. Only if it works, Killua replied pragmatically. It'll work, Gon insisted. And maybe someday you can come back to visit, properly, without tearing holes in dimensions. Ben smiled at that. I'd like that. He activated the Omnitrix one more time, transforming into clockwork. The process began with a surge of energy from the Omnitrix, guided by Varric's instruments and Krallo's recitation of formulas from the Codex. The dimensional tier widened in a controlled manner, showing not swirling chaos this time but a clear view of Bellwood, Ben's hometown. He could see the familiar water tower, the Mr. Smoothie shop, even his high school in the distance. Now, Ben. Varric called over the rising hum of energy. The tear is stabilized. You need to step through. Ben hesitated, looking back at his friends one last time. Thank you, he said, his clockwork voice resonating strangely. For everything. He was about to step through when a commotion erupted behind him. Krallo had made a sudden move toward the Omnitrix, only to be intercepted by Kurapika's chains. I knew it, Kurapika hissed. You never intended to honor our agreement. The opportunity was too valuable, Krallo replied, unnervingly calm even with a chain around his throat. A device that can traverse dimensions. The spider could expand beyond a single world. Ben, go. Gon shouted, already moving to help Kurapika. We've got this. The tear was beginning to fluctuate, the image of Bellwood wavering. It was now or never. But Ben couldn't leave his friends to face the troop alone. Not like this. In a flash of green light, he transformed from clockwork back to human form, then immediately into 4 arms. No one gets left behind, he roared, charging into the fray. The battle that followed was chaos. Troop members against Hunter examinees, with Varric scrambling to maintain the dimensional equipment. Ben fought alongside his friends, using his transformations in concert with their nin abilities. During the fight, the dimensional tear began to destabilize, growing larger and more erratic. Strange creatures, shadows and shapes that defied description, began to emerge partially from the tear before retreating back. The tear is collapsing. Varric shouted over the commotion. If it's not controlled, it will either explode outward or implode, taking everything nearby with it. Ben, now as Diamondhead, froze mid-battle. He looked at the tear, then at his friends, then at the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. A decision crystallized in his mind. Everyone get back, he ordered, transforming once more into clockwork. I know what I need to do. As his friends retreated, Ben approached the tear, channeling all of Clockwork's temporal energy into stabilizing it. The strain was enormous, the Omnitrix beeping in warning as it neared overload. What are you doing? Varric demanded, checking his instruments. Sending myself home, Ben replied, and sealing the tear from the other side. That's not in the calculations. Varric protested. The energy backlash could destroy the Omnitrix. Risk I have to take, Ben grunted, the effort of maintaining the tear clearly taking its toll. Better than leaving these tears in your world. Gon pushed forward. Ben, wait. There must be another way. No time, Ben said, the tear now stabilized enough to show Bellwood clearly again. Been great knowing you guys. Wish we had more time. With a final surge of effort, Ben propelled himself toward the tear. As he passed through, he released a massive pulse of energy from the Omnitrix, designed to seal the rift behind him. The last thing he saw before the tear closed was his friends' faces, Gon's determined, Killua's understanding, Kurapika's respectful, Leorio's concerned, and behind them, Krallo Lucifer watching with that same calm curiosity, the codex clutched in his hands. Then he was falling, tumbling through familiar Bellwood air, the Omnitrix smoking slightly on his wrist as he reverted to human form. He landed hard on grass, specifically, the field behind Bellwood High School. For a moment, he just lay there, staring up at a sky he hadn't seen in weeks. Ben. Ben. A familiar voice called. Footsteps pounded across the grass, and suddenly Gwen was there, her face a mixture of shock and relief. Where have you been? You've been missing for 3 days. 3 days? Ben repeated incredulously, sitting up. I was gone for almost 2 months. What are you talking about? Where did you go? Gwen demanded, helping him to his feet. 1 minute you were fighting that squid alien, then there was this green flash, and you vanished. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, which seemed to have returned to normal functioning. Then he looked back at the empty air where the dimensional tear had been. Somewhere on the other side, his friends were continuing their journeys, Gon searching for his father, Killua finding his own path, Kurapika pursuing his vengeance against the Phantom Troop. It's a long story, Ben told his cousin with a small smile. But I made some good friends. As they walked back toward civilization, Ben silently promised himself that someday, somehow, he'd find a way back to that other world, properly this time, without dimensional catastrophes. He had a feeling his adventures with Gon, Killua, and the others weren't quite finished. For now, though, he was home. And he had learned more about power and purpose than he ever could have imagined. Chapter 3, Hunters returned 6 months after returning home, Ben still dreamed of the Hunter world. He'd slip into sleep and find himself back in Heaven's arena, training with Gon and Killua. Or running through Yorna's rain-slicked streets, the Phantom Troop on their heels. Sometimes he'd even see Kurapika's scarlet eyes glowing in the darkness, full of purpose and pain. Tonight's dream felt different. More vivid. More real. Ben stood in a white void, the Omnitrix pulsing erratically on his wrist. Across from him stood Varric, his glasses reflecting nothing. The barriers are collapsing, Ben Tennyson, Varric said, his voice echoing strangely. Your hasty exit left the job half done. This isn't real, Ben replied. You're just a dream. Varric smiled. Am I? Check your watch. Ben jolted awake, sweat-soaked sheets tangled around him. His bedroom was dark except for the Omnitrix, which glowed a sickly yellow instead of its usual green. What the? He tapped the faceplate. Nothing happened. Instead of cycling through aliens, the display showed unfamiliar symbols, pulsating in rhythm like a heartbeat. Ben grabbed his phone and called the one person who might understand. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" Gwen's groggy voice answered. "The Omnitrix is doing something weird," Ben said without preamble. "Like, really weird." 20 minutes later, Gwen was examining the device in Ben's room, her hands glowing with mana as she passed them over the watch. "I'm sensing dimensional energy," she said, frowning. "Similar to what I felt when you disappeared before. I had a dream about Varric, this scientist from the Hunter world. He said the dimensional barriers are collapsing." Gwen's eyes widened. "Ben, your watch is picking up a transmission. It's like it's receiving a signal from another dimension." The Omnitrix suddenly projected a hologram, a fuzzy, static-filled image of what looked like Gon's face. "Ben, coming through, Varric has, danger." The audio cut in and out before the hologram dissolved completely. The Omnitrix returned to normal, its familiar green glow restored. "That was Gon," Ben said, standing abruptly. "Something's wrong. I need to go back." "Back? Are you insane?" Gwen grabbed his arm. "You barely made it home last time. And Grandpa Max is still off-world with the plumbers, we can't just..." "I know," Ben cut her off. "But they're my friends too. And if the dimensional barriers are failing, it affects both our worlds." Gwen stared at him for a long moment. "You really care about them, don't you?" "Yeah," Ben admitted. "I do." "Then I'm coming with you," Gwen declared. "Two Tennysons are better than one." Ben shook his head. "Someone needs to stay here and monitor things from this side. If both of us disappear, who's going to protect Earth?" Much as she hated to admit it, Ben had a point. After calling Kevin to fill him in, they headed to Los Soledad, the abandoned military base where the dimensional incident with the squid alien had first occurred. "My theory," Gwen explained as they walked through the empty compound, "is that this place has residual dimensional energy. If you transform into clockwork right here, where the barrier is already thin, you might be able to reopen a stable pathway." "Might?" Ben raised an eyebrow. "It's dimensional physics, not baking cookies," Gwen shot back. "There are no guarantees." Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling to clockwork. "Keep your phone handy. If I don't contact you in 24 hours, I'll come after you myself," Gwen finished. "Whether you like it or not." Ben smiled. "Wouldn't have it any other way." He slammed down on the Omnitrix. The familiar green flash enveloped him, replaced by the copper-mechanical body of clockwork. Focusing his temporal powers, Ben searched for the dimensional frequency of the Hunter world, a unique vibration he'd experienced during his time there. The air in front of him began to warp and bend. The effort was enormous, like trying to pry open a vault door with his bare hands. Just as he felt the Omnitrix might time out, a tear appeared, small at first, then expanding to human size. "It's working," Gwen called, her hands glowing with mana as she helped stabilize the portal from her side. Clockwork stepped toward the dimensional tear. Through it, he could see a familiar landscape, the dense forest surrounding Heaven's arena. "Be careful," Gwen shouted over the rising hum of energy. Ben gave her a thumbs up, the gesture awkward with Clockwork's mechanical hand. Then he stepped through the portal, feeling the now familiar sensation of passing between dimensions, like diving through syrup into water. The tear sealed itself behind him. Ben collapsed to his knees, reverting to human form as the Omnitrix timed out. For a moment, he just breathed, letting his senses adjust to the Hunter world again. "I made it," he murmured, looking up at Heaven's arena towering in the distance. Finding his friends proved easier than expected. As Ben approached the massive tower, he spotted a familiar green outfit and spiky hair exiting the front entrance. Gone. Ben called, quickening his pace. Gon whirled around, his eyes widening in disbelief. Ben. The next moment, Ben found himself tackled in a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. You're back. You're really back. Gon was practically bouncing with excitement. We tried to contact you. Did you get our message? Sort of, Ben laughed, extracting himself from Gon's grip. What's going on? I had this weird dream about Varric, and then the Omnitrix started going haywire. It's bad, Ben. Gon's expression turned serious. Really bad. Come on, the others are upstairs. As they rode the elevator up Heaven's Arena, Gon filled Ben in on the past 6 months. After Ben's departure, the dimensional tiers had seemingly sealed themselves. Life returned to normal, Gon and Killua continued training, Kurapika pursued the Phantom Troop, and Leorio focused on medical school. But about a month ago, people started disappearing, Gon explained. First just a few, then dozens. And weird creatures began showing up, things nobody's ever seen before. What kind of creatures? The kind that don't belong in our world, came Killua's voice as the elevator doors opened. The white-haired boy stood in the hallway, arms crossed but with an unmistakable smile playing at his lips. Behind him were Kurapika and Leorio, both looking surprised but pleased. Look what the cat dragged in, Leorio grinned, stepping forward to clap Ben on the shoulder. The dimensional tourist returns. We didn't expect to see you again, Kurapika said, his normally reserved expression warming slightly. Though we hoped. I got your message, Ben explained. Sort of. The Omnitrix picked up a transmission. That was Wing-san's idea, Gon said. He thought if we could channel enough Nen into a communication device at the location where you left. Wing's involved in this? Ben interrupted, surprised. Everyone's involved now, Killua replied grimly. The Hunter Association has classified the dimensional incursions as an Omega-level threat. They led Ben to a hotel suite that had been converted into a makeshift command center. Maps covered the walls, marked with red dots indicating dimensional activity. Computers displayed readings Ben didn't understand, and in one corner, a sealed container held what looked like a writhing shadow. What is that thing? Ben asked, pointing to the container. We're calling them Void Walkers, came a familiar voice. Wing stepped into the room, adjusting his glasses. Entities from the space between dimensions. They've been slipping through the weakening barriers. Ben approached the container cautiously. The shadow creature inside had no definite shape, its edges constantly flowing and reforming. They possess people, Kurapika explained. Take over their bodies and use them to, we're not entirely sure what. But they've been gathering at certain locations around the world. Let me guess, Ben said. Places where dimensional tiers appeared before. Killua nodded. Exactly. And the epicenter of all this activity? York New City, where you left. Varric's behind it, Leorio added, pulling up an image on one of the computers. He's been spotted at multiple incursion sites, along with members of the Phantom Troop. The image showed Varric standing beside a dimensional tear, much larger than the one Ben had created to return. Nearby stood Krallo Lucifer, holding the interdimensional codex. We think they're trying to force open a permanent gateway between dimensions, Wing said. Using the combination of the codex and residual energy from your Omnitrix. But why? Ben asked. What's the point? Power, Kurapika replied simply. Control over dimensional travel would make them unstoppable. They could plunder countless worlds, escape any pursuit. Or they just want to watch the world burn, Killua added darkly. The barriers aren't just weakening between our worlds, Ben. They're fracturing between all dimensions. If they collapse completely, reality itself might unravel, Wing finished. Ben absorbed this information, unconsciously touching the Omnitrix. So what's the plan? Gon grinned. Now that you're here, we have a fighting chance. The plan, developed over the following hours, was both simple and desperate. While the Hunter Association mobilized to contain dimensional breaches worldwide, Ben and his friends would target the source, Varric's operation in York New City, where the barriers were weakest. According to our intelligence, Kurapika explained, pointing to blueprints spread across the table, Varric has established a research facility in the old auction house. He's using technology derived from your Omnitrix, combined with the Codex, to systematically weaken dimensional barriers. But he doesn't have the actual Omnitrix, Ben pointed out. How's he replicating its energy? He's not, Wing said. He's using the residual energy you left behind, amplifying it through NIN conductors. It's crude but effective, like using an echo to simulate an original sound. So we shut down his facility, Ben nodded. I've trashed plenty of evil labs before. It won't be that simple, Killua cautioned. The Phantom Troop is providing security. And Varric has recruited dozens of NIN users to power his equipment. Plus, Gon added, the dimensional tiers are unstable. If we just blow everything up, we might make things worse, Ben finished, understanding. So we need precision, not just power. Kurapika nodded approvingly. Exactly. We need to access Varric's control systems and initiate a controlled shutdown while simultaneously reinforcing the dimensional barriers. And how exactly do we do that? Leorio asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. All eyes turned to Ben. The Omnitrix, he realized. If it helped create this problem, maybe it can fix it. That's our theory, Wing confirmed. Your device naturally harmonizes with dimensional frequencies. If we can interface it with Varric's equipment, we might be able to reverse the process he started. Might? Ben echoed, remembering Gwen's similar caution. Wing adjusted his glasses. Dimensional physics isn't baking cookies, Ben finished with a small smile. Yeah, I've heard that one. They departed for York New City that night, traveling in a Hunter Association airship. As they flew, Ben caught up with his friends, learning how their lives had progressed during his absence. Gon had continued developing his NIN abilities, focusing on enhancing his natural strength and speed. Killua had refined his electric techniques, creating what he called Godspeed, a transformation that allowed him to move faster than the human eye could track. Kurapika had pursued the Phantom Troop relentlessly, recovering 2 pairs of scarlet eyes belonging to his clan. Leorio had balanced medical studies with hunter work, specializing in emergency response to NIN-related incidents. What about you? Gon asked as they watched the moonlit landscape below. How was being back home? Ben smiled ruefully. Weird, actually. After everything here, regular alien fights almost seemed. I don't know, routine. Plus, no one there understands what I went through. What I saw. You missed us, Killua teased, though his eyes were serious. Yeah, Ben admitted. I did. Ben, Kurapika said, joining them by the window. There's something you should know before we arrive in York New. His tone made Ben tense. What is it? Varric isn't just trying to create dimensional gateways. According to our intelligence, he's specifically targeting your world. Earth? Why? Technology, Kurapika explained. Your world has technology far beyond ours, especially alien technology. The Phantom Troop sees it as the ultimate treasure trove. And Varric gets to play with an entire universe of new scientific toys, Killua added. Win-win for them, catastrophe for everyone else. Ben's hands clenched into fists. Not if we stop them first. Dawn broke as they approached York New City, the skyline hazy with unusual fog. As they drew closer, Ben realized it wasn't fog at all, the very air seemed to shimmer and distort in places, reality itself growing thin. The dimensional barriers are already failing, Wing observed grimly. We may have less time than we thought. They landed outside the city, approaching the final kilometers on foot to avoid detection. The streets were eerily empty, with occasional abandoned vehicles and signs of hasty evacuation. The Hunter Association ordered a full evacuation 3 days ago, Kurapika explained. Most civilians are gone. Most? Ben raised an eyebrow. Some refused to leave, Leorio replied. And others, couldn't. As if on cue, a shambling figure emerged from an alleyway ahead, a middle-aged man in torn business clothes, moving with unnatural jerky motions. His eyes were completely black, and his skin seemed to ripple as if something moved beneath it. Void Walker, Killua whispered, dropping into a fighting stance. Possessed. The possessed man tilted his head, regarding them with those empty black eyes. When he spoke, his voice overlapped with something inhuman. More vessels. The convergence approaches. All will be remade. We don't want to hurt you, Dawn called to the human host. We can help. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your concept of help is irrelevant. The walls between worlds grow thin. The architect has shown us the way. The architect? Ben asked. You mean Varric? At the name, the creature hissed. The visionary. The breaker of barriers. He reopens the paths that were sealed by the first ones. Before they could question it further, the possessed man lunged with impossible speed. Killua moved faster, electricity crackling around his body as he intercepted the creature, striking pressure points that would normally incapacitate a human. The Void Walker merely stumbled before attacking again. This time, Ben activated the Omnitrix, transforming into Diamond Head. Crystal shards shot from his hands, pinning the creature to a nearby wall without seriously injuring the human host. How do we get that thing out of him? Ben asked, maintaining the crystal restraints. Wing stepped forward, his hands glowing with Nen. Like this. He placed his palms on the possessed man's chest and forehead, channeling his aura in a specific pattern. The man convulsed, black smoke pouring from his mouth and eyes. The shadow-like entity tried to escape, but Wing contained it within a sphere of Nen energy. I can't hold it long, Wing grunted. Ben, your Omnitrix reacts to dimensional energy. Can you? Understanding immediately, Ben transformed into Feedback, a tall, one-eyed alien with plug-like appendages on his fingers and antennae. Reaching out, he absorbed the shadow entity, converting its dimensional energy into something his body could process. Whoa, Ben gasped as the energy coursed through him. That's intense. The man slumped unconscious but alive, his body free of possession. Leorio quickly checked his vital signs. He'll live, Leorio confirmed. But his system is shocked. Like severe electrical trauma. There will be more of them, Wing warned, looking toward the city center. Many more. They continued toward the auction house, encountering more possessed citizens and increasingly strange phenomena, objects floating in mid-air, patches of ground where gravity seemed reversed, areas where time moved visibly slower or faster. The dimensional bleeding is accelerating, Wing observed as they passed a street where rain fell upward into storm clouds. We don't have much time. The auction house loomed ahead, surrounded by a shimmering barrier that distorted light passing through it. Beyond the barrier, the building had been transformed, strange machinery protruded from its walls, and a column of energy shot upward from its roof into a swirling vortex in the sky. That doesn't look good, Ben muttered. The barrier is Nen-based, Kurapika analyzed, his chains materializing around his hand. I can breach it, but they'll know we're coming immediately. Maybe we want them to know, Ben suggested, an idea forming. A distraction out front while some of us sneak in the back. Killua nodded approvingly. Classic. I like it. They split into 2 teams, Ben, Dawn, and Leorio would create a frontal assault, drawing attention and security forces, while Kurapika, Killua, and Wing infiltrated from behind to reach Varric's control center. Remember, Wing cautioned, our primary objective is controlled shutdown of the dimensional equipment. Destroying it outright could catastrophically accelerate the barrier collapse. Got it, Ben confirmed. Surgical, not sledgehammer. Since when do you do surgical? Killua smirked. Ben grinned back. I've got gray matter on speed dial. With plan set, they moved into position. Ben, Gon, and Leorio approached the main entrance, where several black-clad figures stood guard, not phantom troop members, but hired security with moderate nen abilities. Ready? Ben asked his companions. Gon's fists began to glow with concentrated aura. Ready. I still think I should have gone with the infiltration team, Leorio grumbled, adjusting his small glasses. But yeah, ready. Ben transformed into Heat Blast, his fiery body enhanced with the nen techniques he'd learned during his previous time in this world. Flames tinged with blue-white aura swirled around him. Let's make some noise, he said, launching a massive fireball at the barrier. The impact created a spectacular light show, energy rippling across the barrier's surface. The guards immediately tensed, raising alarms. Gon charged forward, his enhanced speed catching the first guards by surprise. His nen-strengthened punches sent them flying backward into the barrier, which shocked them unconscious. More security forces poured from the building, dozens of nen users of varying abilities. Among them, Ben spotted 2 phantom troop members, Finks with his tracksuit and slicked back hair, and Phaeton, small and deadly with his umbrella-concealed sword. Well, Finks called out, cracking his knuckles. The shapeshifter returns. Crawlo will be pleased. He can get in line, Ben replied, hurling more fireballs that forced the guards to scatter. The battle exploded into chaos. Heat Blast weaved through enemies, careful to incapacitate rather than seriously harm the regular security personnel. Gon moved like a green blur, his fishing rod occasionally extending to yank people off their feet or disarm them from a distance. Even Leorio proved surprisingly effective, using a combination of medical knowledge and his briefcase as an improvised weapon to target pressure points. Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, Kurapika, Killua, and Wing successfully breached the barrier using Kurapika's specialized chains. They slipped inside through a service entrance, encountering minimal resistance as most security had been drawn to the frontal assault. Back at the main entrance, the battle intensified. Phaeton engaged Ben directly, his speed nearly matching Heat Blast's flame-propelled movements. You've improved, the diminutive troop member acknowledged, his sword leaving trails in the air as he slashed at Ben. But so have we. Ben switched tactics, transforming into XLR-8. The velocity-based alien, enhanced with nen, moved so fast that even Phaeton struggled to track him. Ben delivered rapid strikes, trying to wear down the assassin's defenses. Across the battlefield, Gon found himself facing Finks, whose rotational nen ability made his punches devastatingly powerful. Each missed strike from Finks destroyed chunks of pavement, keeping Gon constantly on the defensive. Where are your friends? Finks called out, eyes darting around the battlefield. The chain user and the assassin kid? Right here, Gon replied defiantly, not giving away the infiltration. Inside the auction house, Killua led the infiltration team through service corridors, his assassin training proving invaluable for silent movement. They encountered occasional guards, whom Kurapika efficiently neutralized with his chains. The control center should be in the main auction hall, Wing whispered, consulting a blueprint they'd acquired. That's where the dimensional equipment would have the most space. As they approached the main hall, they heard voices, one distinctly Varric's, the other the calm, measured tones of Crawlo Lucifer. The convergence is nearly complete, Varric was saying. Once the dimensional barriers align, we'll have our gateway. And the entities coming through? Crawlo asked. You can control them as promised. The Void Walkers respond to dimensional harmonics, Varric replied confidently. With the Codex, I can establish parameters they'll be compelled to follow. Killua signaled for them to wait, then carefully peered around the corner into the auction hall. What he saw made his eyes widen. The once elegant hall had been transformed into a bizarre laboratory. Massive machines surrounded a central platform where a swirling vortex of energy, similar to the one Ben had created during his departure, but much larger, pulsated rhythmically. Scientists and then users worked at various stations, monitoring equipment or channeling energy into collectors. At the center of it all stood Varric, wearing an elaborate headset connected to the machinery, and beside him, Krallo with the codex open in his hands. More concerning were the containment units lining the walls, dozens of them, each holding a writhing Void Walker entity. Killua retreated to report what he'd seen. They're planning to release those things en masse once the gateway opens, he concluded. An invasion force. We need to warn Ben, Kurapika said, reaching for his communication device. Outside, the battle had reached a stalemate. Ben had cycled through several transformations, Four Arms, Diamond Head, Swampfire, trying to break through the defensive line without causing too much structural damage to the building. Gon and Leorio were holding their own, but tiring against the seemingly endless security forces. Ben's communicator beeped. Ben, they're about to open the main portal, came Kurapika's urgent voice. They have dozens of Void Walkers ready to deploy. Can you stop it? Ben asked, dodging a burst of Nen energy from one of the guards. Not directly, Kurapika replied. The system is too complex to shut down quickly, and Varric has some kind of failsafe. We need your Omnitrix. Kind of busy at the moment, Ben grunted, transforming into Cannonbolt to bowl through a group of attackers. Create an opening, Killua's voice suggested. I'll come get you. Ben looked to Gon, who nodded in understanding. Together, they launched a coordinated attack, Gon channeling massive Nen into a single punch that struck the ground, creating a shockwave that momentarily stunned everyone nearby. Ben used that moment to transform into Big Chill, phasing through the barrier and several walls. Following Kurapika's directions, he navigated through the building, eventually reaching a maintenance corridor where Killua waited. Nice timing, Killua greeted him. This way. They moved swiftly through the building, hearing the sounds of fighting intensify outside, Gon and Leorio continuing the distraction despite being outnumbered. When they reached the observation balcony overlooking the main auction hall, Ben got his first look at Varric's operation. The swirling dimensional vortex had grown larger, now showing fragmented glimpses of multiple realities, including, Ben realized with a jolt, Bellwood. They're targeting my world, he whispered. Not just targeting, Wing corrected grimly. They're merging the dimensional barriers. Creating a permanent bridge. Below them, Varric adjusted controls on his equipment, consulting readings on multiple screens. Energy alignment at 87%, he announced. Convergence in 5 minutes. And our guests? Krallo inquired, gesturing to the Void Walker containment units. Ready for deployment, Varric confirmed. Once the gateway stabilizes, they'll establish beachheads in the target dimension, creating secondary portals from within. An invasion, Ben realized aloud. Now we move, Kurapika decided. Ben, can you get down there and interface with the main control system? We'll handle Krallo and security. Ben nodded, transforming into Ghost Freak for stealth. He phased through the floor, floating invisibly toward the central platform while Kurapika, Killua, and Wing launched their attack from the balcony. Chaos erupted in the auction hall. Killua moved like lightning, his Godspeed technique rendering him nearly invisible as he disabled the scientists and technicians. Kurapika's chain sought out Krallo, who dodged with incredible agility while drawing a knife from within his coat. Wing engaged the Nen users powering the equipment, his precise strikes disrupting their energy flow. Ben, still invisible as Ghost Freak, reached the control platform undetected. Up close, the technology was a bizarre hybrid, parts of it clearly from this world, but other components reminiscent of alien tech from his own dimension. Varric had somehow reverse-engineered concepts from the Omnitrix to build his dimensional gateway. Reverting to human form, Ben startled Varric, who had been focused on the battle erupting around them. You! Varric exclaimed, both surprised and oddly pleased. You've returned. Perfect timing, the convergence needs the original catalyst. I'm not helping you invade my world, Ben said firmly, hand hovering over the Omnitrix. Varric's expression turned calculating. You don't understand what we're accomplishing here. This isn't just about invasion, it's about evolution. The breaking of artificial barriers between realities. Artificial? Ben repeated, buying time as he assessed the control panel. Yes. Varric's eyes lit with zealous enthusiasm. The dimensions were never meant to be separate. In the beginning, all reality was one. The divisions were imposed by entities who sought to contain and control existence itself. And you got all this from the Codex? Ben asked skeptically. The Codex was just the beginning, Varric replied. The Void Walkers showed me the truth. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, imprisoned there when reality was fractured. They want reunification, a return to the original state of existence. By possessing people and destroying worlds. Ben challenged. Yeah, sounds great. Varric smiled thinly. Creation requires destruction, Ben. Surely your transformations have taught you that. Now, step aside or help us. The convergence happens either way. Instead of answering, Ben transformed into Upgrade, a black and green technological alien that could merge with and control machinery. He immediately fused with the control panel, his liquid metal body spreading throughout the system. No! Varric shouted, trying to physically pull Ben away. You'll destabilize the alignment. From inside the machinery, Ben could see the entire system, its functions, its weaknesses, and most importantly, the failsafes Varric had installed. The dimensional portal was approaching critical stability, the point where it would become self-sustaining. He had to act fast. Around them, the battle continued. Kurapika had engaged Krallo directly, his scarlet eyes glowing as his chains clashed with the troop leader's knife. Killua had disabled most of the technicians but now faced several more Phantom Troop members who had arrived as reinforcements. Wing was systematically disrupting the energy flow to the equipment, but too slowly to stop the process completely. Ben, as Upgrade, began rewriting the system's protocols from within. Instead of stopping the portal, which could cause a catastrophic collapse, he began reconfiguring its dimensional alignment. If he couldn't close it safely, perhaps he could redirect it. Varric, realizing what Ben was attempting, began override procedures from a secondary terminal. You can't stop this. He shouted. The barriers are already too weak. If the portal doesn't stabilize properly, the dimensional bleed will accelerate exponentially. Then help me redirect it. Ben called back, his voice echoing metallically through the equipment. Away from populated dimensions. There is nowhere away. Varric retorted. All dimensions are connected in the network. Redirect the portal, and you merely change which ones collapse first. Outside, the situation had deteriorated. Gon and Leorio had been forced to retreat into the building, pursued by Finks, Phaeton, and dozens of security forces. They fought their way toward the main hall, creating a second battlefront that stretched the defenders' resources. Meanwhile, the contained Void Walkers grew increasingly agitated as the portal expanded, their shadowy forms pressing against their containment fields. Ben, still integrated with the system, reached a horrifying conclusion: Varric was partially right. The dimensional barriers had been weakened beyond a simple repair. The portal couldn't be safely closed, at least not from this side. He separated from the machinery, reforming as human Ben. Kurapika, he called across the chaotic room. We need to evacuate. This whole thing's going to blow. What about the portal? Kurapika shouted back, dodging a strike from Krallo. I'm going through it, Ben replied. I can seal it from the other side, using the Omnitrix as a focal point. That's suicide. Varric interjected. The energy backlash would, I know the risks, Ben cut him off. But I've done it before. At that moment, Gon and Leorio burst into the hall, bringing their pursuers with them. The fighting intensified, spreading throughout the massive room as Phantom Troop members engaged the hunters directly. "Ben!" Gon called, spotting him by the portal controls. "What's happening?" "Change of plans," Ben replied. "We're leaving, all of us." "But the portal," Killua started. "I'll handle it from my side," Ben said firmly. "But I need to get everyone out first." Understanding dawned in Killua's sharp eyes. "You're not coming back this time." Before Ben could respond, the building shook violently. The dimensional portal had begun pulling in surrounding matter, growing more unstable by the second. "We're out of time," Wing shouted. "The dimensional collapse has begun." Ben transformed into clockwork, focusing his temporal powers on the portal. "I can stabilize it temporarily, enough for everyone to escape. But you need to go now." "We're not leaving you again," Gon insisted, moving to Ben's side. "You have to," Ben replied. "This world needs hunters. Good ones." Kurapika disengaged from his fight with Krallo, understanding the gravity of the situation. "He's right. We need to evacuate the area, the dimensional backlash could level the city." The Phantom Troop, sensing the danger, had already begun retreating. Krallo cast one last look at the portal, then at the codex in his hands, before signaling his members to withdraw. Only Varric remained, his eyes fixed on the expanding portal with a mixture of fear and fascination. "It's too late," he murmured. "The convergence cannot be stopped. The barriers will fall regardless." "Maybe," Ben acknowledged. "But not today, and not here." With a tremendous effort, Clockwork projected a temporal field around the portal, stabilizing its wild fluctuations. The strain was enormous, warning signals flashing across the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. "Go!" Ben shouted to his friends. "I can't hold it much longer." Killua grabbed Gon's arm. "We need to move. Now." "But," Gon protested. "He knows what he's doing," Killua said firmly. "Trust him." Reluctantly, Gon nodded. Leorio and Wing were already organizing the evacuation of surviving technicians and security personnel. Ben, Kurapika approached, his chains ready. "Are you certain?" Clockwork nodded, the movement jerky with effort. "It's the only way. Get everyone to safety." As they prepared to leave, Varric suddenly lunged toward the portal. "I won't be denied," he shouted. "The truth lies beyond." Ben couldn't stop him without releasing his hold on the portal. Varric threw himself into the swirling vortex, disappearing in a flash of energy. "That complicates things," Ben muttered. With the building now nearly empty, his friends paused at the exit for a final farewell. "You're the best hunter I never got to see get licensed," Gon called, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Take care of them," Ben told Killua, who nodded solemnly. "Your world better appreciate what you're doing for it," Leorio added gruffly. Kurapika simply inclined his head in respect, the highest compliment from the chain user. With that, they were gone, racing to clear the blast radius before the dimensional collapse accelerated. Alone in the auction hall, Ben maintained his temporal field around the portal, which now showed clear images of Bellwood, his hometown, his dimension. With a final surge of effort, he propelled himself forward, passing through the portal while simultaneously using Clockwork's powers to begin sealing it from within. The sensation of interdimensional travel was worse this time, like being torn apart and reassembled molecule by molecule. The Omnitrix flickered dangerously, struggling to maintain the transformation under such strain. Ben emerged into blinding sunlight, tumbling onto familiar ground, the street outside Mr. Smoothie, his favorite hangout in Bellwood. Around him, pedestrians stopped and stared at the bizarre mechanical alien that had appeared from thin air. Behind him, the portal began to contract, but not quickly enough. Something else was coming through, a shadowy mass that coalesced into Varric, his eyes wild and body seemingly charged with dimensional energy. "You can't stop it!" Varric shouted, his voice distorted. The barriers will fall. The convergence. Ben focused all his remaining power on the portal, forcing it closed despite Varric's interference. With a sound like thunder, the dimensional tier sealed shut, releasing a shockwave that knocked pedestrians off their feet and shattered nearby windows. The Omnitrix gave a final warning beep before timing out, leaving Ben in human form, exhausted but alive. He staggered to his feet, facing Varric across the debris-strewn street. "It's over," Ben said firmly. "The portal's closed." Varric laughed, a sound edged with madness. "You think so small, Ben Tennyson. This world, your world, it's just one node in the dimensional network. The Void Walkers will find another way through. And I'll be waiting," Ben replied. "That's what heroes do." Before Varric could respond, the air behind him rippled. A familiar blue glow heralded the appearance of Professor Paradox, the time-traveling scientist who occasionally assisted Ben. "Quite right, young Benjamin," Paradox said pleasantly, checking his pocket watch. "Right on time, I see." "Paradox?" Ben blinked in surprise. "Where have you been?" "I was stuck in another dimension for months." "Yes, about that," Paradox adjusted his lab coat. "I was rather occupied with the multiversal implications of your dimensional hopping. Quite the butterfly effect you've created." He turned his attention to Varric, who was staring at him with shocked recognition. "Ah, Dr. Varric. I believe the Cronians would like a word with you regarding your tampering with dimensional constants." "You," Varric whispered. "The Time Walker. The Codex mentioned you." "Did it?" "How flattering," Paradox smiled thinly. "Though I suspect it failed to mention the consequences of dimensional manipulation on this scale." With a gesture from Paradox, shimmering temporal energy surrounded Varric. "I'm afraid interdimensional incarceration awaits you, Doctor. The Cronians are quite particular about maintaining the walls between realities." "Wait," Ben interjected. "What about the Void Walkers? And the dimensional tiers in the Hunter world?" "Already being addressed," Paradox assured him. "Your friends are quite resourceful. With the main portal closed and the Phantom Troop temporarily scattered, the Hunter Association has matters well in hand." "So they're okay?" Ben asked hopefully. Paradox's expression softened. "More than okay, Benjamin. They're thriving. Would you like to see?" He produced a small device that projected holographic images, Dawn and Killua continuing their adventures, growing stronger by the day. Kurapika pursuing his quest with renewed purpose. Leo Rio excelling in medical training while maintaining his hunter duties. "They miss you, of course," Paradox added. "But they understand why you did what you did." Ben watched the images with a bittersweet smile. "Can I visit them again? Properly this time, without dimensional catastrophes?" Paradox considered this. "Perhaps. The walls between dimensions must heal first. But in time, with proper preparation and oversight. I don't see why not." As Varric disappeared in a flash of temporal energy, Ben realized his cousin Gwen was running toward him, followed closely by Kevin. "Ben," she called. "What happened?" The whole town felt that shockwave. "Long story," Ben replied, suddenly feeling the full weight of exhaustion. "But the short version? I found a way back home. For good this time." Later, after explanations and debriefings, Ben stood on the roof of his house, watching the stars. The Omnitrix had returned to normal functioning, showing no signs of the dimensional strain it had endured. "Penny for your thoughts," came Paradox's voice as the time traveler appeared beside him. "Just thinking about them," Ben admitted. "My friends in the Hunter world. It feels weird knowing they're out there, living their lives, and I'm just here." The nature of a multiverse, Paradox nodded sympathetically. Infinite lives unfolding simultaneously across infinite dimensions. It can be quite the existential conundrum. "Will I really be able to visit them again?" Ben asked. "I said so, didn't I?" Paradox replied with a slight smile. Though perhaps next time, we'll use more conventional methods of interdimensional travel. Your Omnitrix-powered tiers were rather crude, effective as they were. Ben looked down at the watch on his wrist. I learned a lot there, you know. Not just about fighting or Nen, but about purpose. What it means to be a hero. Different worlds, different challenges, same Benjamin Tennyson, Paradox observed. That's why you succeeded where others would have failed. Your core remains consistent across dimensions. Is that a compliment? Ben asked with a raised eyebrow. Merely an observation, Paradox replied enigmatically. Now, I suggest you get some rest. The dimensional traveling has taxed you more than you realize. As Paradox disappeared in his usual flash of blue light, Ben took one last look at the night sky. Somewhere across the dimensional divide, his hunter friends were looking at their own stars, perhaps thinking of him too. See you again, he whispered to the empty air. Someday. 6 months later, Ben was battling Zomboso's circus freaks downtown when his Omnitrix suddenly glowed with an unusual pattern. The fight forgotten, he stared at the symbols appearing on its face, familiar ones he'd seen during his time in the hunter world. After defeating the villains, with a little help from Gwen and Kevin, Ben examined the Omnitrix more closely. It's receiving a transmission, Gwen confirmed, her hands glowing with mana as she scanned it. Like before, but stronger, more focused. The Omnitrix projected a hologram, much clearer than last time. 4 familiar faces appeared, Dawn, Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio, gathered around what looked like sophisticated communication equipment. Ben. Can you hear us? Gon asked excitedly. I hear you, Ben replied, grinning widely. Loud and clear. How did you? We've been working on it for months, Killua explained proudly. Combining Nen with technology from your world that came through during the incident. We thought you might appreciate an update, Kurapika added. The dimensional barriers have stabilized. The Void Walkers have been contained. And the Phantom Troop? Ben asked. Still out there, Leorio grimaced. But they lost the Codex during the evacuation. Without it or Varric, their dimensional ambitions are curtailed. That's really good to hear, Ben said sincerely. I've been wondering about you guys. We've wondered about you too, Gon replied. Actually, that's partly why we're calling. We found something interesting. The hologram shifted to show what looked like an ancient stone arch covered in symbols similar to those in the Codex. The Hunter Association discovered this in ruins beneath York New, Kurapika explained. We believe it's a permanent dimensional doorway, one that predates the separation of worlds Varric was ranting about. With the right key, Killua added, it could allow safe, controlled travel between specific dimensions. Ben's heart raced with sudden hope. And you think? We know the Omnitrix energy signature now, Gon said excitedly. It might be the key we need. Of course, we'd need proper oversight, Kurapika cautioned. Paradox has been in contact, providing guidance. Wait, Paradox has been visiting you? Ben asked, surprised. Occasionally, Leorio confirmed. Weird guy, but helpful. The implication was clear, a way for Ben to visit their world, and possibly for them to visit his, without tearing holes in dimensional fabric or causing catastrophes. So what do you say? Gon asked eagerly. Want to try for Hunter's license round 2? Properly this time. Ben looked to Gwen and Kevin, who both nodded encouragingly, then back to the hologram of his friends from another dimension. I'd like nothing better, he said, feeling a genuine smile spread across his face. When do we start? The hologram of Gon beamed back at him. That's the Ben we know. Paradox said he'll help coordinate from your side. Something about proper dimensional protocols this time. There's so much we want to show you, Killua added. I've developed 3 new Nen techniques since you left. And I've been practicing controlling my transformation limits, Ben replied. Wait till you see what I can do with 4 arms and Nin now. As they continued exchanging updates and planning their reunion, Ben felt a sense of completion he hadn't experienced since returning home. His journey to the Hunter world hadn't been an ending after all, just the beginning of a much bigger adventure. Across dimensions, through challenges and dangers, with powers both alien and mystical, Ben Tennyson had found not just a way home, but a way forward, as both hero and hunter, protecting 2 worlds instead of just one. And in both those worlds, he had found something equally precious: friends who understood him, challenges that pushed him, and a purpose that transcended dimensional boundaries. Until then, Ben said as the transmission began to fade, the Omnitrix reaching its communication limit. Keep hunting. And you keep transforming, Gon replied with a final wave. As the hologram disappeared, Ben looked down at the Omnitrix with renewed appreciation. It had always been more than a weapon or tool, it was a bridge between worlds, cultures, and people. And soon, it would bring those worlds together again. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.